My name is Melissa. I'm 26 years old and getting ready to have my baby at home. But there's a problem. My mother-in-law doesn't seem to like me much. She says mean things about me to my husband when she thinks I can't hear. She says I'm not nice, not helpful, don't make money, and have no good qualities. I wanted to tell her off, but I'm pregnant and don't want to make things worse. So I just try to ignore her negativity and focus on taking care of myself and the baby. I'm really excited to meet my baby soon. So while I'm waiting, I take walks and talk to my belly every day. It's a happy time for me. But then my mother-in-law shows up unexpectedly and stays for too long. She complains about everything, like the food and the baby's room. Finally, my baby is born safely, and even though things are busy, I enjoy raising her in my cheerful childhood home. I tell my husband that I'll be back at his place next weekend, but secretly, I wish I could stay home a little longer. I wonder how long I can rely on others, especially since my husband isn't interested in doing housework. I thought to myself. Holding my sleeping baby Lisa in my arms, I smiled at her. "This is going to be your home, Lisa. We need to go back and make it cozy," I whispered. When I arrived at our house with lots of bags, I hoped someone would open the door for me when I rang the bell, but nobody did. I struggled to unlock the door and went inside, only to find nobody there. I had told my husband I'd be back by now. As I walked into the living room, I was shocked by what I saw. What happened here? The room was a complete mess, with stuff scattered everywhere. It wasn't just untidy. It looked like someone had deliberately made a mess. Was it a break-in? Terrified, I ran out of the house. "Hello, police. I just got back from having my baby, and my house is a disaster," I said shakily into the phone, while my peacefully sleeping baby began to cry, adding to my panic. A neighbor passing by noticed our distress and kindly invited us to rest at their house. They helped me calm down from the shock and fear. After giving my daughter some milk, she fell back asleep. Soon, we heard police sirens, and I went back to my house with the neighbor by my side. The front door was still locked. I was too scared to go in after seeing the living room, so I hadn't checked the other rooms. When I explained this to the police, they commended me for being cautious. They explained that encountering a burglar can be dangerous, so it's safer to stay outside and wait for them to arrive. I hadn't thought about that in my rush, but the idea scared me now. As I finished explaining, a voice full of uncertainty spoke up. "What's going on? Why are the police here?" It was my mother-in-law. "It's a bad situation, mother-in-law. Our house has been ransacked, and we suspect it was a burglary. The police are here to investigate," I explained before she could interrupt. I felt a sharp sting on my cheek as my mother-in-law slapped me hard. My vision blurred from the shock, and amidst the chaos of neighbors and police, I instinctively held my sore cheek. My mother-in-law's face was flushed red with anger as she yelled at me, accusing me of being shameless for calling the police about a burglary. I was stunned, unable to understand why she was so furious, especially with the pain in my cheek throbbing. A neighbor tried to intervene, explaining that calling the police was the right thing to do and it's their job to investigate, but she wouldn't listen. She went on to scold me for leaving my husband alone and going back to my parents' house during childbirth. She said I was useless if I wasn't at home doing housework. And now, she was upset that I had caused a scene by calling the police. Even though everyone around tried to reason with her and tell her it wasn't my fault, she wouldn't listen. As I tried to make sense of it all, I realized something strange. Despite our house possibly being burgled, she didn't seem concerned about any losses. And even though it was the first time she was meeting her grandchild, she didn't show any interest. Why? Everyone around me didn't seem to agree with what I was saying. That's not the point. How can you accuse me without even saying sorry? My mother-in-law completely ignored my question, sticking to her argument. "Mom, what's happening?" Brian, my husband, interrupted the argument, appearing quite calm. "Brian, listen to this. It's awful." My mother-in-law's face lit up with delight at the sight of her beloved son. Melissa apparently called the police. Why? She's been going on about a burglary, but that's impossible. Brian, please tell her to stop being so ridiculous, my mother-in-law insisted. Is that true? Melissa, maybe you got it wrong about the burglary. It's bothering the neighbors, you know? And the police have other things to deal with, so let's send them away soon. Brian said, trying to calm things down. What? I was shocked, but for a different reason this time. Not only was my mother-in-law against me, but now my husband, Brian, seemed to be too. I couldn't believe he would say something like that. Wait, Brian, our house isn't just messy. The police are still investigating. We don't know for sure if it was a burglary yet, but something is definitely off about the state of the house. We're about to check if anything's missing and file a report. No, absolutely not. Brian interrupted me with a raised voice. But why? The conversation was becoming more confusing by the moment. I felt lost, and tears began to fill my eyes. I came back here, and nobody was here, and the room was a mess. I didn't know what happened, and I was scared. Unable to hold back my sobs, I found comfort in the embrace of a neighbor, their warmth making me cry even more. Yet in front of me, both my mother-in-law and husband seemed irritated and simply stared at me. Why? Why won't you understand? My heartache seemed to affect my daughter too, as she woke up crying. This only seemed to annoy my mother-in-law and husband even further. With the kindness of the neighbors and the concerned look of the police, I ended up spending the night at a neighbor's house. Stolen things? I don't know. Melissa's just overreacting. Let's go inside, my mother-in-law said, while my husband added, yeah, Melissa, calm down. They didn't seem to care about the mess and quickly went inside after the police finished their investigation. I didn't think he was like that, I thought, standing in front of the closed door, recalling my husband's words. My mom still treats me like a child, and it's annoying. I usually just go along with her to avoid conflict, but it's really a hassle. Despite his complaints, though, I couldn't stay outside forever. After apologizing repeatedly, I ended up spending the night at my neighbor's house. Mom needs to be strong. I'll do my best, I whispered to my daughter, who was finally falling asleep despite being fussy. The next day, when I returned home, my mother-in-law and husband were there. Did you really stay here last night with everything in such a mess? The living room was somewhat tidied up for them to sit, but it looked no different from the day before. I had checked the other rooms with the police, and it seemed like things had been thrown out of storage in all of them. The mess was everywhere. Despite always complaining about my cleaning, my mother-in-law had stayed in the house in that condition, and she hadn't lifted a finger to clean up. She just sat there, looking unhappy. What do you mean? Did you really? I felt sorry for Brian, who was abandoned by his wife, so I couldn't go home. Her words hit me, and I responded, "It's not that I left. It's that you didn't listen to what I was saying." What? How dare you speak like that? My mother-in-law's face quickly turned angry. Brian jumped in and stopped making a big deal out of the burglary. Have you calmed down now? He said it in a way that irritated me, and something inside me snapped. You're right. It's not like we were burgled, huh? I was surprised by how calm my voice sounded, but Brian didn't react to my anger. He just smirked a little. Finally realized it, huh? Yeah, you were overreacting about the burglary. Anyway, start cleaning up, Brian said as if it was someone else's problem. And my mother-in-law looked smug. Cleaning and taking care of the house are a wife's duties, aren't they? My mother-in-law said this in a sickeningly sweet tone, as if talking to a pet. What? I'm not cleaning up. It's your mess, so you should clean it, I said, feeling belittled by them. What? How dare you? As expected, they didn't like my response. You're such a terrible wife. Get to work. My mother-in-law snapped at me, clearly annoyed. What a hassle, my husband grumbled in agreement. I handed them the divorce papers I had prepared and filled out first thing in the morning. I want a divorce, I said firmly. My husband blinked, looking surprised. That's right. I want a divorce right now, I declared firmly. In that instant, My mother-in-law grabbed the divorce papers and melodramatically lamented, "Oh, poor Brian, being treated like this is so awful," as she hugged my husband's head. "Such a big baby, aren't you?" Ida tried to bite my tongue, but my true feelings slipped out. "What did you just say, Melissa?" The two of them were so furious they seemed ready to explode, but I wasn't going to back down. "Did you not hear me? Or are you pretending not to understand, Brian? Divorce. Sign the papers now." I knew it was petty. I knew I shouldn't stoop to their level, but I didn't care at that point. Stop joking around and apologize. Enraged, they pushed me to the ground, pinning me down. Apologize now. Brian's strength made it difficult to breathe, and tears filled my eyes. "Melissa, let go of my daughter right now." My saviors were my parents rushing to my rescue. Behind them, I saw the friendly officer from the previous day, coughing and struggling for air. Relief washed over me, and my strength waned. "Why are you barging in here like this? Leave immediately." My mother-in-law and husband were being held back by the officer, squirming and resisting. "It's useless. You've been caught assaulting someone." With my father's help, I stood up and smiled at the two struggling figures. "Actually, I just asked the officer to come and check on the situation from yesterday. I never expected you to attack me." "What? What's happening?" My husband growled, but I wasn't afraid anymore. "We have a baby monitor camera installed in this house for our little Lisa. It's a live stream camera. It couldn't record the person who trashed the room, but as I spoke, both of them visibly relaxed. "Huh. So what if it's a live camera? I told you, right? Now, the kind neighbor who helped us yesterday is watching over this room. They listened to your conversation yesterday, along with a lot of people at the police station. My parents were watching too." Yes, after my mother-in-law and husband disappeared behind the door yesterday, I started checking the baby monitor camera. The police suspected that this whole break-in thing seemed fishy, perhaps even staged. Not just my mother-in-law, but my husband too might be involved, I explained. They guessed right. When I came home, the room was all messy, and you both acted surprised, blaming me for it. You planned to make my parents apologize by saying they didn't want a daughter-in-law who'd do something like that. But you didn't want a daughter-in-law at all because we had a baby girl, not a boy. You wanted to replace me with someone else, right? And what's this about an affair approved by the mother-in-law? I said it all quickly, and everyone looked at them coldly. It must be a mistake, my husband said nervously. No way. I would never cheat. Melissa, do you still have more to say? This nonsense. Stop. My mother-in-law, who forgot herself for a moment and got angry, wasn't forgiven by the others. I also refused to accept being judged on such an unfair basis. I don't want a family that doesn't care about how our baby is doing. It's not right that our neighbor, who's been looking after her, shows more love than my own family since I arrived today. I'm going back to my parents' house. And yes, I'll file for divorce and fight for custody of our daughter. It seems that's what you all wanted. No, wait a minute, not to the police station. I don't want to go. Let go. I don't want to. Both of them caused a scene as the police took them away. Afterward, my mother-in-law and husband became infamous in the neighborhood, and not in a good way. They tried to make things right by offering me a divorce settlement, but it didn't help. The rumors had already spread. No matter how much they insisted they paid me, no one believed them. I returned to my parents' house and am raising my daughter with their help. Through a friend's recommendation, I found a job nearby. It's not easy, and I have my worries, but when I see my daughter's smiling face, I feel determined to do my best. I'll work hard to raise Lisa well, making sure she doesn't turn out like her father.
"Get out of the way. You're blocking the pregnant lady," Caroline said, gently stroking her belly. Her face held a mean-spirited expression that made you wonder, shouldn't pregnant women have a more gentle demeanor? I looked over at my husband, Oliver. "Go sleep in the storage room," he chimed in, echoing Caroline. Watching Oliver side with Caroline, My love for him cooled off. Yet, a part of me still felt a pang of sadness. "All right then," I replied. Oliver happily took Caroline's hand in response. Caroline gazed back at him, utterly smitten. The sight of them together washed away my melancholy, replacing it with a rising anger from within. "I'll be out by tomorrow." Sure. "Oh, why don't you find somewhere else to stay tonight? This is mine and Caroline's house now," Oliver said, elated. I nodded slightly and left the house. They won't be laughing for long. Leaving the house, I allowed myself a smile, imagining what comes next. My name is Sophia, a 46-year-old housewife. Before marriage, I worked hard, but that was over 20 years ago. Now, I enjoy my days doing household chores and savoring coffee, just an ordinary middle-aged lady. My hobby is investing, which I've done since before I got married, recently enjoying significant dividends that allow for luxury hotel lunches and spa visits. Oliver, 43, is a salesman for a major company. He's definitely put on some weight, and honestly, his scent has become rather strong recently. But as a salesman at the top of his game, he sure has a way with words. Despite looking like a big burly guy, I've always loved him. I've thought about encouraging him to lose some weight for his health, but there's a certain adorable quality to him that made me think maybe it wasn't necessary. We have a daughter together, Hazel. Hazel has inherited Oliver's facial features, and being slim, she has the beauty of a model. Not just in looks, but academically and athletically. She excels, bringing home top grades and being selected for national competitions, all while being humble and hardworking. Both Oliver and I dote on her, often to the point where others say we're overprotective. Oliver has a bit of a weakness for younger women, but he chose me, an older woman, and has always prioritized our family, so I've come to accept his occasional wandering eye. We lived in a second-hand apartment bought around the time Hazel was born, which has been aging, leading to discussions about increasing the maintenance fees. Amidst this, Hazel decided to do room sharing near her university. At the same time, my relatives offered us an uninhabited house to inherit, prompting Oliver and me to decide on rebuilding it and moving in. Little did I know that this move would lead to such a turn of events with Oliver. While our old apartment had 4 rooms, our new home has only 2. It's smaller than before, but designing it as a single-story home considering our elder years has made it very comfortable. One of the 2 rooms, a combined study and guest room, can be divided into Hazel's room and a study, making 3 rooms if she comes back. Since moving, Oliver's nights have become late due to work engagements, and he often finds excuses to go out on weekends. Being sensitive to smells, sleeping next to Oliver, who reeks of alcohol and tobacco, has been a challenge, even with separate beds. Thus, despite having a shared bedroom, I've been sleeping in the study since we moved into the new house. When it came time to send out moving announcements, I took the initiative, sending letters far and wide. Oliver isn't great with these sorts of things, so I handled sending letters to the in-laws' house and his relatives on his behalf. Since both my parents have passed away, I only sent brief notices to relatives and friends on my mom's side. I haven't kept in touch with anyone from my dad's side of the family, and that's largely due to my sister, Caroline. Caroline is my half-sister, 14 years younger than me. She was born to my dad's second wife shortly after my mom died when I was in my first year of middle school. Caroline was already 2 years old when they remarried, so I initially thought it was a marriage where both parties already had children. My dad passed away in an accident, along with his second wife, about 5 years after they got remarried. At the funeral, relatives on my dad's side mentioned that he and his second wife had been childhood sweethearts, and everyone had expected them to marry. They blamed my mom for coming between them, saying she proposed marriage through her company connections, leaving no choice for my dad but to marry her, casting his second wife into the shadows. Despite my memories of my parents being happy, it turns out my dad had a child with his second wife behind the scenes. That revelation shocked me more than anything. At the relative's house, Caroline's favorite foods were always served. She wore brand clothes, had the biggest room to herself, and was taken to any place she wanted immediately. In contrast, I was burdened with preparing meals, doing laundry, cleaning, had my part-time earnings taken away, and my room was a small storage space under the stairs, where I was begrudgingly provided with the bare minimum after asking. By the time Caroline reached the middle grades of elementary school, she had learned about my mom from relatives and had come to look down on me. I had to juggle multiple part-time jobs to finally move out of that house. With such experiences, it's no wonder I harbored no fond feelings for Caroline, and I hadn't told her about my marriage or having a child. A few weeks after moving in, I was enjoying a coffee when the doorbell rang. A man's voice said, "Delivery." The screen showed someone looking down. Wondering if Oliver had ordered something, I opened the door. And I was surprised by the person who was there. "Caroline? What are you doing here?" "It's been a while, sis. I just showed up." The person in front of me was indeed wearing the hat seen on the doorbell camera, but it wasn't a delivery person. It was my sister, Caroline. Caroline slipped past me, frozen in shock, and made herself comfortable on the sofa in the living room. I hurried after her and stood towering in front of her, looking down. "If you knew it was me, you wouldn't let me in, right?" That's why I used a recorded voice from before. "That's awful, deceiving me like that." "Oh, scary." Caroline feigned fear at my raised voice, but it was clear she was acting, evidenced by her smiling face. "I've come back home." "What?" Confused by Caroline's nonsensical remark, I responded coldly. With a bright smile, Caroline began to explain her sudden visit. "Well, you never tell me where you are. I got married, but my husband's always on business trips, and it's boring. And when you get pregnant, it becomes harder to move around, right? Everyone said I should come and have you take care of me. Go back. I have no intention of dealing with you, let alone take care of you. But I've already come here planning to have you look after me, so it's impossible." I was frustrated with Caroline's unapologetic attitude. Hearing her mutter, "Thief's daughter," under her breath, my anger reached its peak. "Get out. I never want to see your face again." "What's all the noise about?" It can be heard from outside. "Oliver, Surprised by Oliver's unexpected return, I was at a loss for words when Caroline stood up and went over to him. Then she wrapped her arm around Oliver's. Oliver didn't shrug her off and seemed pleased with her presence. "Oh, Caroline's here. Welcome." "Oliver, sis is being mean." I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice to stay with Oliver until the baby is born? But is that not okay? "That's great. If you don't mind, you're welcome to stay as long as you like." I was stunned by the conversation between Oliver and Caroline. Not only that, but Caroline was clinging to Oliver, their proximity resembling that of lovers. "Oliver, what's this all about? You see, Caroline's had it tough, hasn't she? Why be so harsh?" Jealous of your cute sister? I felt despair at Oliver's words. I had told Oliver about my family situation before we got married. Yet, he said such things. Look, you're not using your bed in the bedroom anyway, so it should be fine, right? Really? I can sleep in the same room with you, Oliver? Sleeping next to you sounds like it'd bring sweet dreams. Oliver, really? Their conversation, like that of a close couple, gave me a headache. Ignoring me, the two of them went to the bedroom, still arm in arm, to put away their luggage. However, when they didn't return after a few minutes, a bad feeling led me to peek into the bedroom. There, I found them embracing each other. Living with you feels like a dream come true. The baby's happy, too, to live with Dad. Caroline's words filled me with despair. Oliver is Dad? What does that mean? Oliver, looking pleased, nodded while embracing Caroline. We should leave the sister to babysit and go on a date. She's only good for that. I watched them kiss through the tears, peeking through the door gap. From that day on, they treated me like a housekeeper. While obeying them, I began to gather evidence little by little. I discovered more shocking truths about our household, leading me to consider divorce. One day, Caroline, sitting on my favorite sofa, summoned me. She spoke as if she owned the place. "Get out of the way. I'm pregnant," Caroline said, gently rubbing her belly. Shouldn't pregnant women look more compassionate? Caroline's face was filled with malice. I looked at Oliver. "You should sleep in the warehouse," he said, agreeing with Caroline. Seeing Oliver side with her, my love faded. Still, I felt a bit sentimental. "All right then." Oliver happily took Caroline's hand in response. Caroline looked at Oliver adoringly. At that moment, my sentimental feelings vanished, replaced by anger from the bottom of my heart. "I'll be out by tomorrow." Yeah. Oh, why don't you find somewhere else to stay tonight? This place is now mine and Caroline's. I nodded slightly and left the house, thinking they won't be laughing for long. After leaving, I smiled, imagining what comes next. I stayed in a hotel, planning my next steps. I arranged for movers to come the next day and planned to go to the office early before heading home. Excited about the future, I had trouble falling asleep that night, but feeling liberated, my heart felt lighter. The next day, I went as planned to get the divorce papers and headed home. The movers were already there, looking confused. They said the house was empty when they arrived, with just one cardboard box left at the entrance. At the entrance was indeed a small cardboard box with a note saying, "Please take whatever you want." Inside were my treasured books and cosmetics tossed carelessly, with books damaged and pages torn. At the very back was Oliver's wedding ring, fueling my rage. Entering the house, I found the bedroom in disarray, with sheets, pajamas, and underwear scattered about, making it clear what had happened after I left. "Please take all of these items," I said, closing the bedroom door and leading the movers to the study. Oliver doesn't read, so the study was filled with books collected by me and Hazel. Since I only had a few outfits to begin with, I decided to take this opportunity to buy new ones. When I entered the living room, I found a letter on the dining table. The letter mentioned that Oliver and his companion were going on a prenatal trip abroad for 5 nights and 6 days. It instructed me to keep the house clean during their absence and to prepare for the divorce immediately upon their return. I was dumbfounded by their selfishness. However, this made my plan much easier to execute, so I secretly thanked them in my heart. After having the movers take all my belongings, I removed my wedding ring and left it in the kitchen. Leaving the ring behind, I exited my home. I debated over where to move, but ended up buying a place near Hazel's University that happened to be for sale. The new house was very comfortable, and I enjoyed my solitude for the first time in a while. On the day of their return, my mobile phone kept ringing incessantly. I knew who it was without even looking at the screen. Without diverting my eyes from the book I was reading, I answered the call. Yes, yes. What the hell is this about? Oliver blurted out without any greeting, his voice frantic. The reason was clear, but I responded casually. What do you mean? Don't play dumb. The house is gone. I couldn't help but laugh out loud at Oliver's statement, hearing him panic on the other end. After my laughter subsided, I replied to Oliver, Why? Well, it's my house, so if I'm not living there, I don't need it, right? We were living there. What about our stuff? Don't worry. I've kept everything as is in a storage unit. I'll send you the location and the PIN in a message. Don't mess around. Bring everything back now. Give us our house back. That's funny. The land and the house are in my name. I used the money I made from investments to build it. Not a dime from you. It seemed Oliver finally remembered the circumstances under which the house was built. When we were deciding whether to remodel or rebuild, Oliver said he had no money and told me to do whatever I wanted with my own money. So, I took care of everything from the paperwork to the payments, building the house to my liking. But Oliver, seduced by Caroline, had completely forgotten about that. Please, it's for your niece or nephew that's about to be born. Find us a house. It's unfair to Caroline. My niece or nephew? I'd love to meet someone who can adore the child of the husband who cheated on them. What are you saying? Did you think I wouldn't notice? Oliver had believed he hadn't been caught, but his confident demeanor quickly changed. I pressed on. I've been aware of your affair with Caroline since the day she barged into our house, and I've been collecting evidence since then. Evidence? The baby camera Caroline had me buy. It's been recording. You didn't notice, did you? Oliver let out a small sound. The baby camera was the first thing Caroline demanded when she settled in. She had already done her homework and requested a high-end camera that cost $1K. Of course, I initially refused, but after being yelled at by Oliver, I reluctantly bought it. However, the camera setup was left entirely to others, and neither Oliver nor Caroline had touched the camera since its purchase. So, I secretly activated it, capturing everything in the bedroom. True to its price, it even captures clear images in the dark, including both of you in bed and what you were doing under the covers. Snooping around like that is in poor taste. I was merely testing the capabilities of the baby camera. Still better than a man who cheats with his wife's sister, I'd say. Oliver seemed unable to respond. To Oliver, I cheerfully said, "Oh, and I think I left the mailbox untouched, so you might want to check that." The mailbox? Yes, it should have arrived by now. I could hear Oliver checking the mailbox over the phone. Then, the next moment, I heard his surprised voice. "Oh, good. It looks like it arrived, the certified mail. Make sure you take care of the payment, okay? Hey, there's one for Caroline, too. Are you going to leech off your sister?" "What are you talking about?" "You two betrayed me, so this is a compensation claim. Family or not, it doesn't matter. But no excuses. We'll go through lawyers from here on out. Bye." "Wait, Sophia." I hung up ignoring Oliver's call. My phone kept ringing off the hook, but I ignored it. I had already signed up for a new mobile phone over these 5 days, so the old one was just for keeping evidence. Ignoring it caused no problems. Oliver kept calling for about an hour, but eventually gave up. He seems to have complained to the lawyer, who later reported to me with a tired voice. The next morning, I got a call on my mobile phone from Dad's side of the family. Since I hadn't given them my contact information, it was probably Caroline who had whined to them, planning to scold me. Reluctantly, I answered the call while recording it on my new phone. Yes. How could you throw out a pregnant Caroline like that? Apologize to her immediately and provide a new house as compensation. Why should I apologize to a woman who slept with my husband? Whatever Caroline has told you, she should be the one to apologize. And she should be the one to pay compensation. This is why the daughter of a thief. Right. Just like the child of a dad who betrayed mom and had a child with his affair partner. You end up with someone weak-minded enough to sleep with her half-sister's husband, growing up just as poorly. Oh, and please tell Caroline to stay away from me from now on. Though, I doubt she'll have the luxury to do so. The relative was still complaining, but I hung up. Feeling surprisingly refreshed after venting everything I had been holding back. I contacted the lawyer to summon Caroline and Oliver. I wouldn't close this chapter of revenge until I saw their frustrated faces. The meeting at the law office then took place. Before me were Caroline, looking sulky, and Oliver, appearing disgruntled. It seemed they hadn't learned their lesson, even after all that had been said. I never thought my sister would turn out to be such a miser. I'm shocked. If I knew she was so greedy, I wouldn't have married her. I was deceived. Hearing Caroline and Oliver's self-centered comments, I moved beyond anger to sheer disbelief. I laid the divorce papers in front of them and also presented another document, a marriage registration form. As for the compensation, I might consider reducing it if you sign this. If signing this is all it takes to reduce the amount, then give it here, Oliver said, snatching the pen from me to sign. Caroline also signed, laughing. I put the documents in a file and then smiled brightly. I'll make sure to submit this to the office. Did you forget, sis? I'm already married. It won't be accepted anyway. Well, don't worry. You're single now. Huh? Caroline looked at me with a dumbfounded expression. I rephrased it for her, making it easier to understand. Yesterday, the divorce mediation finalized our divorce. I didn't know about that. Well, you threw away the mail without checking it. There were several letters, orders to appear in court. I got a message from your husband saying the divorce was finalized, and now he's filing to deny paternity of the child. That can't be. While Caroline stood there dumbfounded, Oliver seemed oddly pleased. No wonder, since he could marry Caroline until after her remarriage prohibition period ends. To Oliver, who seemed quite content, I smiled sweetly. It must be tough for you, having to support a child that isn't yours. What? The child in her belly is mine. Oh, you didn't know. Poor thing. The child Caroline is carrying is actually from her real boyfriend at the club. Club guy? When Oliver turned to Caroline with force, she awkwardly looked away, indicating my statement was true. Seeing this, Oliver's face turned pale, realizing the truth. Good luck with the compensation payment and raising someone else's child. I know it'll be tough. Sophia, let's start over. I was wrong. After all, there's Hazel. As Oliver changed his tune, the door to the lawyer's office burst open, and a woman walked in. Oliver turned pale the moment he saw her. Hazel? Dad, you're the worst. Hurting Mom like that. I'm cutting ties with you. From now on, I'll live with Mom. You and that loose woman can just disappear. Hazel had never spoken so harshly before, leaving Oliver frozen in shock. Meanwhile, Caroline, insulted, was red-faced and trembling. Who are you calling loose? Sleeping with someone other than your husband, then my husband, and also your real boyfriend from the club. Which part of that isn't loose? Are you insane? Hazel's fierceness left Caroline speechless. I delivered the final blow to Caroline. Just so you know, he's frugal but never manages to save money because he spends it all on young women. So be careful. What? But what about the house, the car? Oh, those, all mine. Bought with my dividend income. We used them as a married couple, but after the divorce, we're strangers. A man with a $3K salary couldn't afford that car anyway. $3K. Even though he works for a big company, apparently motivated by money, Caroline was frozen in shock. Oliver, too, was looking down, embarrassed by the revelation of his low salary. Well, good luck with everything. I said that and left with Hazel, entrusting the rest to the lawyer. The dinner I had with Hazel that night was genuinely enjoyable and delicious, the best we had in a long time. Later, I filed the divorce papers. When Caroline's remarriage prohibition period ended, I also submitted Oliver and Caroline's marriage registration. The witness section was signed by me and Caroline's ex-husband. Oliver was fired for repeatedly cheating with Caroline during work hours and misappropriating travel expenses for their affairs. Now he's struggling, working part-time jobs to make ends meet. Caroline seems to be taking care of the child, but cries daily, having been dumped by her club boyfriend once the money ran out, unable to tolerate her unbearable personality. Caroline admitted she targeted Oliver because she couldn't stand that I got married and had a child before she did, wanting to ruin it. She thought she could get money from both her ex-husband and Oliver by claiming the child was Oliver's and leave the care to me while she visited her club boyfriend. After all this, even her relatives have abandoned her, forcing her to reluctantly take up part-time work, which didn't last long due to her attitude. Now, she, Oliver, and the baby live cramped together, barely scraping by. Hazel is enjoying her university life. I was surprised to learn her roommate was her same-sex partner, but seeing Hazel happy made me think it was all right. As for me, I continue to live off my dividend income. After the divorce, I've been in touch more with Caroline's ex-husband, who's been asking me out to dinner. It seems that Caroline and her ex-husband were married through their parents' introduction, pushed heavily by Caroline herself, I later learned. Yet, I wonder why she was dissatisfied with him, to the point of curiosity. I received a message from him earlier on my mobile phone, saying he has something important to discuss, making me feel somewhat restless today. Despite telling myself not to expect too much, my face blushed like that of a girl in love as I sat in front of the dresser, applying makeup.
I'm pregnant with Rachel's child. I want a divorce. Okay, here are the divorce papers. I'm done with the caregiving. My husband, Cody, drops this bombshell on me while I'm single-handedly taking care of his mother, Sarah. But even hearing his words, I didn't flinch. Instead, I calmly do as he says and hand him the divorce papers I had prepared. What? You need to keep taking care of her." "No way." "Because Rachel is." Cody is baffled by my overly composed reaction. To him, I reveal the secret about my sister, Rachel. "My name is Megan. I've been married to Cody for 5 years. And now, I'm considering divorce." What led me to this point was when Cody started taking his phone into the shower with him. He was always indifferent to messages, but lately, he's been glued to his phone. During meals, he puts his phone on the table. When he gets up, he tries to hide it, as if he doesn't want anyone to see. He never cared about mobile games before, so his sudden change in behavior made me suspicious. That's how it started. When we first got married, there were no signs of him cheating at all. While we were dating, he was the epitome of seriousness. I married him thinking he wouldn't cheat. I never imagined back then that I would come to suspect him like this. Another reason I married him was that there were hardly any women at his workplace. He's not bad-looking, so if there were female coworkers, I probably would have suspected an affair. But the only women at his job are some older ladies in the office. There's a significant age gap between us and them. I can't imagine Cody making a move on someone like that. If anyone, it would be my sister, Rachel. When I was in elementary school, Mom remarried, and we started living with Rachel and her family. She's Dad's daughter, and we don't get along. Rachel has always been selfish, looking down on me for everything. There were times when I rebelled against her and the house was filled with animosity. But she has a way with words, a genius at making men go crazy for her. Dad never questioned anything she said, and Mom doted on Dad, so I had no allies in the house. Rachel will do anything to make herself look good. Even if she insults me or treats me horribly, as long as it benefits her, that's all that matters. She doesn't care what happens to anyone else. She is that kind of person. I try to empathize with others' pain, so her arrogant attitude disgusted me. Rachel must be lonely without any sisters, so she's taking it out on you. Forgive her. She'll realize how kind you are someday. Mom would always say when I complained about her, convincing me to be patient. Mom absolutely adored Dad. So much that she was blind to everything else around her. Dad skillfully deceived Mom like that and cheated on her with multiple women. Working in sales for an IT company, Dad was away on business trips for most of the year. He was hardly ever home. So whether he was cheating or doing whatever else, Mom probably never noticed. She believed in Dad, thinking that he loved her so everything was fine. I first noticed Dad's suspicious behavior when I was in 5th grade. He started fidgeting with his phone constantly, not putting it down even during meals. It was way too late for calls from clients, and more than anything, the look on his face when he got a message was creepy. He'd always check it while hiding it from Mom, replying with a lecherous grin. He never acted like that before, but lately he doesn't even try to hide it. Dad must have realized that Mom was infatuated with him. Out of curiosity, I peeked at Dad's phone and saw a list of secret meetings and date plans with women I didn't know. Seeing that, I despised Dad from the bottom of my heart. I couldn't forgive him for using Mom's feelings and playing with her. I felt hatred. Your mom is an idiot too. Do you really think a guy like Dad would be satisfied with such a plain woman? Rachel had noticed Dad's behavior. She knew why Dad married Mom and said something shocking to me. Dad married your mom because he wanted a convenient woman. Your mom is a good cook and housekeeper. For Dad, who has no money problems, he gets someone to look after the kids and can make time for himself too. That woman was used just for that. How ironic, Rachel said mockingly, and anger welled up inside me. Mom respected Dad, and she put effort into cooking because she wanted his approval. I supported Mom for working hard for the person she loved and wished for her happiness. This father and daughter so easily trampled on Mom's feelings and toyed with her. I couldn't forgive that. I told Mom about it, but she seemed to be completely brainwashed by Dad. She wouldn't listen to me at all. Instead, Mom yelled at me. She said it was terrible of me to talk about Dad like that. After that, I gave up trying to convince Mom. There was no one in this house who understood me. I felt like I had no place where I belonged. The turning point in my life came when I started high school. At the time, I heard my best friend was going to a high school far away. She said she wanted to work somewhere far in the future. The moment I heard that, I made up my mind too. I decided to leave home. I moved into a dorm and started working part-time to earn money for living expenses. That's where I met Cody at work. Cody had great communication skills and was quite popular at the office. He was good at his job, adored by both men and women, a true leader. He was a bit airhead too, which might have been part of his charm, as even the older coworkers doted on him. What brought Cody and I closer was a dinner party at work. We ended up sitting next to each other, and thanks to the chance to talk, we found out we liked the same bands. After that we hit it off and started hanging out privately as well. As we gradually grew closer, we started dating. We got married on my 25th birthday. We started living together and were enjoying happy days. Until that day when Rachel showed up at our house. Long time no see. I decided to live out here too, so I came to see how you're doing. Somehow Rachel had left our parents' home and moved here, just like I had. I couldn't hide my surprise at her unexpected actions.
Why are you here, Rachel? Weren't you working near Mom and Dad's place?
The salary doesn't go up much over there, and you know, I always dreamed of city life. So I decided to take the plunge and move. That's a lie. There's no way Rachel would move here for a reason like that. There must be some ulterior motive. I was suspicious, but in the end, time passed without me figuring out her objective.
Hello. I came over to hang out again today.
5 years had passed since Rachel moved here. She started practically living at our house. The reason was Cody. Around this time, Rachel began making advances toward Cody. Cody, who worked for a construction company, usually had weekends off. And every weekend, Rachel would show up at our place. She worked for a subcontractor of Cody's company, so she probably knew his days off. Using the excuse that she didn't have any friends here, she would invite herself over.
Rachel, good work today. You came again. Cody, I'm here again today.
Speaking in a cloying voice, Rachel cozies up next to Cody. She plops down beside him like it's the most natural thing, then looks over at me with a triumphant grin. Seeing that expression makes my anger well up, but what irritates me even more is Cody.
You can come over anytime. It gets lonely with just Megan and me here. I'm happy when you drop by, Rachel.
With a vulgar smirk on his face, Cody seems not entirely opposed to the idea. The way his gaze is directed not at Rachel's eyes, but her chest, even makes me feel disgust. Rachel must notice Cody's stares too, as she wraps her arm around his in a way that accentuates her body, happily pressing her breasts against him. How many times have I witnessed this scene by now? Even if I step in and say this isn't that kind of place, the two of them won't listen to a word I say.
Are you going through menopause or something? You get all worked up as soon as Rachel comes over. Quit it with that attitude. You're making Rachel feel bad. Cody, you're so kind. I might fall for you. But it's okay. I'm sure Megan is just jealous seeing you be so nice to me. Even though we don't have that kind of relationship.
The two of them exchange glances, agreeing with her words. I couldn't believe a single word that came out of Rachel's mouth. Because ever since we were young, Rachel always wanted to take everything that was mine. Just me getting a new toy was enough to make her throw a huge fit and cause trouble for our parents. In middle school, just seeing friends who had nothing to do with her being close to me made her so jealous, she'd try to tear them away from me. Just me having something she didn't was enough to make Rachel feel inferior and try to take it from me. It was a bad habit of hers. And now, that same sister was coming over to our house nearly every weekend. I couldn't help but feel anxious. And it was around that time when Cody started carrying his phone with him everywhere, not letting it out of his sight, even taking it into the bathroom. Just like Dad used to. Intuitively, I felt he was cheating. That premonition crossed my mind. But even if I wanted to look into the truth, I couldn't find the time. The reason was that I had to take care of my mother-in-law, Sarah. Cody had asked me to care for Sarah in between my work.
Mom is on a wait list for a care facility, so until she gets a spot, I need you to look after her. Why? Did you forget all the things Sarah used to say to me?
My relationship with Sarah wasn't that great. At the beginning of our marriage, we got along decently, but Sarah had quite a meddlesome personality and would frequently come over to our place. I guess she was lonely after my father-in-law passed away early. Thanks to that, Sarah and Rachel also got to interact a lot. The two of them would hit it off and get all excited together right in front of me, while I'd be busy making food to entertain the three of them, not even able to take time for myself. It became too much to bear, so I begged Cody to have Sarah visit less often. When Cody conveyed that to Sarah, our relationship soured from there. Sarah started berating me, saying she was just coming to check on me out of concern.
Not even considering how I feel and treating me so coldly.
The moment I heard Sarah's words, I thought there was no way I could build a good relationship with this person. So I started avoiding Sarah.
After brushing me off so coldly like that, now you suddenly want me to take care of her? Do you really think I can happily look after Sarah? So what? You're just going to neglect Mom? I'm out working from morning till night, and I'm the breadwinner of this household. If you're going to selfishly disregard Mom like that, then wait until you earn as much as I do before complaining. Then I'll quit my job and take care of Mom myself.
I couldn't argue back. Even with remote work, I only make $3,000 a month. Cody makes over $8,000. It would be hard to match his salary the way things are now. And it's true that I have more time flexibility than he does. Unable to find the words to refute him, I reluctantly agreed to take care of Sarah. And so began my days of juggling work and caregiving. This life was more hellish than I ever imagined. Around this time, Sarah needed physical assistance and had also developed mild dementia. Giving advance notice was important, and sudden changes were difficult for her to handle. She would throw tantrums and lash out. She remembered the past well, so every time she saw my face, she would yell at me, repeatedly screaming to call Rachel instead of me.
Someone heartless like you shouldn't have been Cody's wife. It should have been a girl like Rachel. I can't believe you have the nerve to show your face here.
Every time she said that, it left deep wounds on my heart. I lost count of how many times I felt hatred towards Sarah. But there were also times when she wasn't like that and would express gratitude. She tearfully apologized for her wrongs and calmly explained why she had come over to our house so much.
You see, Cody has always had a habit of putting on a nice face for people. He seemed happy after marrying you, but you two never had kids, right? I was worried he might be fooling around with other women, so I ended up coming to keep an eye on him. I was thrilled when you and Cody got married. I wanted to protect your happiness.
Sarah told me. You have no idea how I feel. When I first understood the meaning behind those words, my tears flowed endlessly. She had been visiting our home to act as Cody's watchdog. Sarah had been coming over out of concern for me, not Cody. I hadn't noticed Sarah's compassion and had been neglecting her. I deeply regretted that, and from then on, even when Sarah said things about Rachel, I chose to endure it and live with the guilt. However, in the midst of those days of perseverance, tragedy suddenly struck. I'm pregnant with Rachel's child. I want a divorce. Somehow Cody had gotten Rachel pregnant. Their affair had indeed escalated. Honestly, rather than being shocked, I calmly thought this was just as I had expected.
What do you mean?
Exactly what I said. I got Rachel pregnant. If I don't acknowledge it as the father and take responsibility by marrying her, it'll be sad for Rachel and the baby, don't you think?
Sad?
Hatred swelled at Cody's words. He was worried about Rachel and them, but didn't spare a thought for me. I was his wife, but I could see clearly that in his eyes that I was just an obstacle. It'd be lonely and sad for the kid to not have a dad since birth. Luckily you and I don't have any children, so divorcing shouldn't be a problem, right? You make enough income to live on your own. Our love had already gone cold anyway. Fed up with Cody talking and laughing like that, I pulled out the divorce papers from the living room drawer. Actually, early in our marriage, Cody and I had a huge fight over differences in values. At that time, the topic of divorce came up and Cody had prepared these divorce papers. Our signatures were already on there, and all that was left was to submit it. Although things had deteriorated to that point, once we cooled down, we talked it over and called off the divorce. I had kept these divorce papers in case something happened.
Here, the divorce papers. I'm done with the caregiving.
When I showed him the divorce papers, Cody flashed a defiant grin. He probably thought that with this, he could leave me and find happiness with Rachel. That he would finally be free from this hell. But the world isn't that easy. When I told Cody, elated, that I would abandon the caregiving, he made a perplexed face.
What? You need to keep taking care of her.
Cody must have panicked when I suddenly declared I was done with the caregiving. He stared at me in a fluster.
Why? We won't be married anymore, so I have no obligation to look after Sarah. You owe her for taking care of you, don't you? You're not going to repay that kindness?
Cody was just parroting the words without knowing what Sarah meant by kindness. It really got on my nerves.
You have no clue what feelings were behind Sarah's actions, so can you stop spouting nonsense? What did you say? In the first place, if you had just behaved properly, it wouldn't have come to this. Cheating and acting without discretion, do you realize how pathetic that is?
Cody must have gotten upset at being confronted with the hard truth. He suddenly raised his voice.
It's your body's fault for not being able to have kids, isn't it? You couldn't satisfy me as a woman, so the cause lies with you. A bottom-tier woman like you has no right to complain about being cheated on. It's your fault for not working harder on improving yourself.
No matter what I said or how I said it, Cody retorted with absurd arguments. Appalled by how terrible he was, I let out an exasperated sigh.
Since you're a woman who can't satisfy me, at least keep up the caregiving. Rachel and I both have jobs, and now we've got a kid on the way. We can't be bothered to take care of Mom. Rachel is your sister, right? Your sister is having a baby. Do you not feel compelled to help out a little? No way. Because Rachel is.
Cody was determined to make me continue the caregiving no matter what. To Cody, I revealed a shocking truth.
She's not my real sister or anything. She's a complete stranger. Why should I have to give up my precious time for someone like that? What?
It was the first time Cody had heard about my family situation. He was baffled by what I told him.
You see, my dad and mom got remarried. Both of them already had kids. So Rachel and I are complete strangers. We're not related by blood, and just last month, my parents got divorced. Rachel's dad's cheating came to light and mom moved out. It just so happened that mom had asked me about living together, so your divorce came at the perfect timing. I had noticed you two were having an affair, so I thought of bringing up divorce myself.
On top of the shock that Rachel wasn't my sister, Cody probably never imagined that I knew about their relationship. The dumbfounded look on his face was so ridiculous, I almost burst out laughing.
By the way, Rachel's dad is a really difficult person. He can't rest easy unless the cleaning is thorough every single day, and he thinks people who don't respect their elders are scum. If we started eating before he took a bite, that would be enough to make him angry. Living at that house was so suffocating. I hated it so much that I left town when I was in high school. To get away from that family.
As Cody heard these unexpected circumstances, the color drained from his face. He had fallen perfectly into Rachel's trap, and in an instant, he became anxious about the future. His reaction was so comical, I let out a laugh.
Good for you, getting a divorce. I bet as soon as you divorced me, you were planning to move in with Rachel and live with her dad too, right? I'm sure such a blissful future awaits you now. How did you know that?
Even if he could imagine living with Rachel, how did I foresee her dad getting involved? The answer is simple. I had thoroughly investigated the two of them. I hired a private investigator with my savings and requested an investigation into them. Of course, I had them look into Rachel and Cody, and also Rachel's dad. And then I found out that Rachel and Cody had even made arrangements to live with her dad. Not knowing what kind of person Rachel's dad was, Cody agreed to living together so Rachel wouldn't dislike him. The reason Rachel had been coming on to Cody was because she wasn't confident about living with her dad alone. She knew that her dad was an incredibly difficult person.
I wonder why. Why don't you try to figure it out yourself?
Oh, that's impossible. If you had the brains to think it through, you wouldn't have so easily agreed to this cohabitation proposal.
You little...
Provoked, Cody's anger must have swelled. As Cody looked ready to raise his fist at any moment, I pulled out my phone and immediately pointed the camera at him.
Go ahead and hit me if you want. I'll just take that evidence straight to the police. If that happens, forget remarrying Rachel. What do you think her dad will say? I feel bad for your unborn kid. If they find out their dad is a criminal, they might get bullied at school. Damn it.
Cody doesn't have the guts. As soon as he heard the word police, he lowered his fist, glaring at me while biting his lip in frustration. Let me tell you one more thing, poor Cody.
Rachel's dad, you see, his cheating came to light and mom hit him with a divorce. In other words, that man is being sued for a huge sum in the divorce settlement. And on top of that, you'll also be sued for alimony in our divorce, so you'll be living in poverty. In the midst of that, you'll have a baby? No matter how much above average income you make, this will be tough. It's the worst.
As I mockingly told him what was likely to happen, Cody's face turned deathly pale. As if to say no way, he clutched his head, starting to regret his naivete.
By the way, I'll be having Rachel pay compensation for this matter, too. What?
As I delivered those words that dealt an additional blow, his eyes widened in surprise. Of course I will. You didn't think you would be the only one, did you? An unmarried person stole the husband from a married woman. Even if we used to be a family, there's no way I'd show mercy here. I really can't fathom how he thought as long as he was the only one to sacrifice himself, everything else would be fine. Rachel has put me through hell up until now, so I have to properly collect what's due. From now on, you'll have to take care not only of Sarah, but Rachel's dad and Rachel herself. In fact, you'll be saddled with repaying alimony for 3 people every single day. What a living nightmare. I'd absolutely hate being in that kind of hell. You would have been much smarter to apologize to Rachel, give up, and walk through life with me. Hearing those words, Cody probably thought if he apologized, I would help him. He rushed to my feet and began apologizing while crying.
Can't you do something? I never thought it would turn out like this.
Cody regretted his naivete and was desperately trying to somehow retract the divorce. But that won't work on me. I lost any affection for Cody ages ago.
Can you give up? I can't even stand to look at your face anymore. I'm filled with happiness finally being able to leave you. Thanks to your indiscretions, it looks like I can tack on extra compensation in the divorce settlement. I'm truly grateful. I'm a free woman. Right now, I'm overflowing with a sense of liberation.
As I rejoiced in this happiness with my arms spread wide, Cody, not knowing when to quit, grabbed the hem of my pants.
Please,
he begged.
Don't say that and reconsider. At this rate, my life going forward will be a living hell. Not my problem.
I dismissed Cody's pleas with cold words. When I was going through hard times, he only prioritized himself and never once considered my feelings. The resentment and hurt from that time will never disappear. I absolutely won't let it be like it never happened. Those feelings must have shown in my eyes. When Cody looked me in the eye, he flinched and pulled away from my feet, retreating.
Whatever you do or whatever happens to you has nothing to do with me. It's your own responsibility, right? Don't come to me for help with that. Just talking to you like this is unpleasant for me. I don't want to see your face, and I hate even breathing the same air as you. Got it? If I could, I'd erase my memories and get rid of all traces of you. That's how angry I am. If you understand, won't you hurry up and get out? This house is still in my name.
With that, I gathered up Cody's things and threw them towards the front door. This house we're living in now, I got it for cheap by begging my cousin, a real estate agent, right after I got a job. Cody was looking for a place to live, too, so he had no objection to me getting this house. He moved into my place and we started living together. And from there, it turned into marriage.
After apologizing this much, what's with that attitude? It's your fault for not valuing me that things turned out this way, isn't it?
He must have gotten irritated after having his belongings thrown out. Despite being filmed by the phone camera, he raised his fist at me. At that moment, the lock on our front door clicked open, and the private investigator and Mom came to my rescue from outside.
That's enough, Cody. Get away from Megan. Huh? And who's that guy?
The investigator immediately restrained Cody. There was no way the slimmer-than-average Cody could win against the well-built investigator. Even as he tried to struggle, he was pinned down so firmly he couldn't move. As if to protect me from Cody, Mom embraced me and glared at him with sharp eyes.
I'm a private investigator hired by Megan. I had hidden cameras set up to properly record the footage of this scene. Of course, we'll be using that as evidence.
Hearing about the cameras, Cody regained his composure, a look of despair on his face. I was worried my phone alone wouldn't be enough, so I had them set up in advance. Thanks to that, We had evidence of the assault and witnesses too. Cody's life was completely over, and he realized that, at a loss for words. Your actions just now constitute assault. If you don't want to make the damage any worse, quietly take your things and leave. You have no chance of winning. Hearing the investigator's words, Cody gave up his futile resistance.
Megan, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. This was all a mistake. I want to be with you after all. So please, give me one last chance.
Give it a rest. He may have stopped resisting, but his desire to be forgiven probably hadn't disappeared. With tears in his eyes, Cody turned back to me, begging for another chance. But to him, I delivered the final blow.
I don't want to do anything with you going forward, and as you can see, the divorce papers are already signed. You're the one who brought up wanting a divorce, so don't start saying all sorts of things now. You're the one who chose to abandon me and indulge in pleasure, right? It's too late to regret it now. I have no lingering feelings or affection for you. I don't feel anything anymore. If you get it, hurry up and leave. I'll have my lawyer contact you later about the rest.
This was the first time I had ever stated my opinion to Cody so clearly. Perhaps finally giving up after hearing my unusually cold tone, Cody accepted it, gathered his things, and left. And so, I was freed from my long-standing curse and became a liberated woman. Right after that, I hired a lawyer, the investigator introduced me to, and submitted the divorce papers. With the decisive evidence and Cody's domineering attitude during discussions, I was able to get nearly $80,000 in the divorce settlement.
You've got to be kidding! Why should I have to pay this much? We were practically family. What are you thinking? Trying to extort money from your sister?
Later, when I went to talk to Rachel about the settlement, she predictably flew into a rage. Rachel's dad was there with her, and the two of them ganged up on me in condemnation. However, I had my lawyer there with me too, and the lawyer backed the two of them into a corner.
You're not even blood-related sisters, yet you wave around those arguments while stealing Megan's precious husband. It's only natural that your crime is heavy, and being family doesn't give you a free pass. You've destroyed a household.
Rachel couldn't refute the lawyer's sound reasoning. To Rachel, I spat out my pent-up resentment.
What you've done to me until now is even more unforgivable than Cody. I'll thoroughly corner you and wring out every last thing I can. Just like you've always done to me. Brace yourself. Don't think you'll get off with just money.
The moment I said that with a cold gaze and tone, not getting emotional, Rachel trembled as if frightened. I asked the lawyer to back her into a corner. Perhaps thanks to the lawyer's efforts, Rachel was slapped with a $50,000 lawsuit. And so, Rachel and her family were saddled with nearly $200,000 in household debt. The amount Mom was seeking from Dad also easily exceeded $50,000, so they were truly experiencing debt hell. Just when I thought it would end with that, an even more shocking truth came to light afterward. It turned out the child Rachel was pregnant with wasn't Cody's after all. In fact, while Rachel was cheating with Cody, she had apparently been seeing another man at the same time. The baby in Rachel's belly was that man's child, and Cody was uninvolved. What's more, that other man was Cody's subordinate at work. The subordinate found out Rachel was cheating and refused to acknowledge the child. He had intended to make her suffer with that, but then he heard about her remarrying Cody and exposed Rachel's misdeeds within the company. The two of them were fired from the company, scorned by acquaintances, and divorced a mere month after remarrying. Rachel was also slapped with an alimony lawsuit from Cody. They're both apparently doing day labor jobs while steadily paying off their debts. Since then, I've been living together with Mom. The moment I left Dad, I swore in my heart that I would protect Megan. It was actually Mom who had helped arrange to hire the private investigator. It was because I had Mom's support that I found the resolve to divorce Cody and could stand up to him instead of running away. From now on, no matter what happens, I'm on your side. True to her word, Mom has always been there for me. After the divorce, I started an online business utilizing my PC skills. What I was doing under the guise of remote work was creating a community for kids who couldn't go to school anymore and setting up an environment like a free school on the internet. I made a curriculum to support the studies of truant students and teach them the PC knowledge they'll need going forward. I myself went through a lot of painful experiences with no one to talk to. I don't want those children to go through that. Those words I said in a magazine interview caught the attention of many people, and now interview requests from media are flooding in. Thanks to that, the business has been a huge success. Many families whose kids attend have expressed their gratitude to me. Taking their words as encouragement, I intend to keep creating a place that can help others.
Madison is just so cute. The voice becomes clear as the door opens. And at that name coming from Connor's mouth, I froze. I wondered who it could be, but hearing that name confirmed it. The woman's voice was indeed my sister Madison's. Connor foolishly kept calling Madison's name over and over. Shivering, I snapped to my senses. I realized I had to capture this scene on video. So, I firmly recorded the evidence on my smartphone and quietly left the spot. After a while, the two of them came out of the bedroom. Seeing me, they turned pale, and I said, "That's right. I sent the video of you two to Gabriel. Anyway, let's discuss what to do next among the four of us soon." At those words, Madison's face turned even paler. What do you mean?" "Just what it sounds like. I've got the video as evidence." "What have you done?" As I held up my smartphone, my sister became utterly frantic. And then she lunged at me. "My name is Grace, a 45-year-old housewife. I have twin boys who are in the 6th grade of elementary school. The kids are twins. I've heard that twins run in families. And indeed, I am a twin myself. I have a twin sister named Madison. Being identical twins, we never really felt like sisters. Rather, we were more like rivals. Even if we weren't twins, it might have been the same. But I grew up always being compared to Madison. Before long, I harbored a strong complex towards Madison, and she, in turn, placed utmost importance on surpassing me. Madison was always the cute and affable child. On the other hand, I was always the shy and reserved one. And because I was also a bit of an introvert, everyone's attention naturally gravitated towards Madison whenever we met someone new. Even though we were rivals, I deeply adored Madison. Her ever-smiling face and popularity were something I aspired to. But it seems Madison didn't feel the same way. We used to play together a lot when we were in elementary school, but I was always stuck with the roles nobody wanted. Grace is it. When nobody wanted to be it in a game of tag, I was always the one forced into the role. Even when one of our friends suggested deciding by rock, paper, scissors, Madison would pressure me saying, "You want to do it, right, Grace?" Not wanting to be disliked by Madison or left out, I had no choice but to agree. Madison's manipulative behavior wasn't just limited to playtime. It was in 6th grade. We were deciding roles for a school play. We were going to perform Snow White, and I, not being much of an actress, hoped to be the narrator. But I caught a cold, and had to miss school on the day of role assignments. Grace wants to be the narrator. I'll tell the teacher for you. Madison said she'd pass on my wishes, so I trusted her and felt relieved. However, when I returned to school after recovering, I was shocked to find out I had been cast as the lead role. "Why am I the lead?" I asked a friend in disbelief. And then came the unbelievable reply. "Madison said you wanted to be the lead." What? I didn't say that, but it's already been decided. It seems that as we were entering puberty, no one wanted to take on the potentially embarrassing lead role of Snow White. So I, the quiet girl who was absent, was chosen. The teacher found it odd that I, usually so reserved, had expressed a desire to take the lead role. Did Grace really say that? The teacher had even checked with Madison. Truly, she wants to, but she's too shy to volunteer. Please let this be an opportunity for Grace to shine. But Madison recommended me as if it was all in my best interest. I cried, insisting I couldn't do it and didn't want to. However, everyone else's roles had already been assigned. Chastised by teachers and parents alike, I somehow managed to pull through. Thanks to that effort, the play was a huge success. Teachers, parents, and friends all praised me. But amidst all this, only Madison looked on displeased. Anyone could have done that. Getting all that praise for such a little thing is just silly. And so, she began to openly resent me. That was the moment I truly felt Madison's dislike. After that, she stopped inviting me to play. At first, it was painful, but once I realized I was no longer being forced into unpleasant roles, I made other friends and started enjoying myself. In middle school, many didn't even know Madison and I were twins. We had become so distant, hardly speaking at school, and didn't look alike at all. We requested not to be in the same class, and I was enjoying my own life. But then, one day, as I was studying for high school entrance exams, Madison approached me. "Studying? Have you decided which high school you're applying to?" "Yeah, thinking of going for a high school." A high school was the newest and closest school to our house, boasting a competitive entrance difficulty. I had been working hard for 3 years because I really wanted to get into that school. But Madison, unaware of my efforts, laughed when she heard my choice of high school. "A high school? You've got to be kidding, right? Why don't you just go to B high school with me? It sounds like you wouldn't even need to study much for that." Madison always managed to bend me to her will. But I didn't want her dictating my choice of high school too. For the first time, I stood up to her. "I've decided to go to a high school. You don't know if it's impossible for me. If you don't want to study, that's fine, but don't get in my way." I turned away from her and went back to my textbook. "What? That tone to your older sister?" Angered by my response, Madison grabbed my textbook and threw it on the floor. "What are you doing? Even if you study, it's a waste, you know. You're destined to be my slave and go to B high school together." That day, we ended up in a physical fight. Our parents came running when they heard the commotion and pulled us apart, but by then my textbook was torn to pieces. But more than that, my heart was shattered by hearing Madison's true feelings about me. To Madison, I was just a convenient target for all the unpleasant things. Realizing that Madison saw me as her slave was a clear awakening. But I didn't give up on studying. Fortunately, my parents contacted the school for me, and I got a new textbook. With my parents' support, Madison no longer interfered with my studies, and I was able to dedicate myself to them and successfully got into my chosen school. As she had initially declared, Madison barely studied for the exams and went on to B high school. Thus, we went to different high schools, pursued our education at different universities, and eventually started our careers. As an adult, I began living on my own. And that's when I met a man. He was my husband, Connor. Connor and I were hired at the same time and felt a closeness because we were from the same area. When he asked me out, I felt like I was dreaming. "I actually like you, Grace. I'd be happy if you'd go out with me." Hearing those words made me incredibly happy. I had feelings for Connor too, but I had never had the courage to admit such feelings openly. I wasn't pretty like Madison, and having had almost no experience with love during my school days, I could hardly believe he felt the same way about me. "I'd be happy too. Thank you." Being in a relationship for the first time made me feel overjoyed. Since we started dating, I've been doing my best to make him happy, cooking meals and preparing lunchboxes for him. Connor started visiting my apartment more often, and we began a life almost like we were living together. "Grace, I'll cook dinner tonight." But it wasn't just me doing things for him. Connor was also very cooperative with household chores. Doing chores together was fun, and I began to think we could make a good married couple. 3 years into our relationship, we decided to get married. I was overjoyed and very happy about it, but there was one thing that worried me. "You're a twin, right? I'd like to meet your sister." Connor brought it up. During the 3 years we were dating, I had told him that I have a twin sister, but I had never introduced him to Madison. I hadn't even told her about having a boyfriend. Since that big fight in middle school, there had been a deep rift between us. Yeah, that's right. But if we were getting married, it was inevitable that Madison and Connor would meet. The thought of how Madison might scorn us made me anxious, but I knew I had to introduce them at some point. "What? Married? Since when?" And when I finally called Madison after a long time, she seemed surprised by my news and raised her voice. I had told my parents, but it seems Madison hadn't heard about it yet. She sounded like this was news to her. "Yeah, and I want to introduce Madison to the man I'm going to marry. I'm busy, you know." "Well, if you insist, I guess I could meet him." Madison was as condescending as ever, so I asked her to make some time for us. Madison hadn't changed since we were kids. I figured I had to be the adult and humble myself. We went back home to meet Madison on her day off. Connor suggested we all have a meal together with our parents, so we arranged to meet at a restaurant. And then, on the day, we went to the restaurant. But even when the time came, Madison didn't show up. "Madison's late. I thought she said she'd be on time." "Sorry, Connor." "Don't worry about it. She'll show up eventually. Let's just wait a bit longer." Both my parents and I felt bad for keeping Connor waiting. 15 minutes past the scheduled time, Madison showed up in a flashy dress. "Sorry, did you wait?" "We did." "What's with the outfit?" "Well, it's kind of like a meet and greet, right? Thought I should dress up." I couldn't help but be exasperated by her. Not just me, but our parents just gave a wry smile. If she knew it was a meet and greet, I wished she hadn't been late without even messaging, especially not for the sake of getting dressed up. Seemed immature for an adult. But, wanting to keep the peace, I swallowed my words. We introduced Madison and Connor to each other. "Wow, Grace, you've snagged a good-looking one. Working at the same place means he must be earning well." Madison made several rude remarks to Connor on their first meeting. "What do you do in your free time?" "With Grace." "No, before you started dating Grace." She grilled Connor like it was a speed dating session. Despite our parents' attempts to stop her, Madison kept going, saying, "It's fine. I want to know what kind of man Grace's husband will be." Connor was gracious, saying, "Don't worry about it," and entertained Madison throughout. By the end of the meal, I was exhausted and sighing. However, it didn't end there. Madison's quite the character, huh? Opposite of Grace. I always say we're the least alike twins ever. When I responded with a forced smile, Connor said, "Maybe you should take a leaf out of Madison's book. She's always smiling, good at conversation, and cute." If I'd met her first. I was shocked at what he meant. I had told him about my discomfort with Madison. To hear him say this, knowing that, was deeply shocking. "Why don't you marry Madison then? She even said you were handsome." When I snapped back like that, he hurriedly apologized. Sorry. It was just a joke. I'm glad I met Grace, and I don't have any special feelings for Madison." "Then you shouldn't say things that praise Madison and put me down. It was a joke." Connor apologized like that. I was shocked, but I wasn't going to call off our engagement over something like this. I just hoped he understood. Right after that, he said, "But Madison is a nice girl. It's not good to be jealous of your sister. Let's all get along as a family now. We're adults. Things are different than they were." I had my reservations, but I knew our parents wanted Grace and me to get along. But I wanted Connor to be on my side. Why was he trying to bring me and Madison closer? But it's not like we'd be interacting much anyway. Arguing seemed too troublesome, so I just nodded along to Connor's words. A few days later, I got a message from Madison. "Isn't Connor too good for you? Should I take him off your hands?" I was chilled by her message. "What are you talking about?" I replied instinctively, and she called immediately. Just what I said. It's unbelievable someone as dull as Grace would get married before me. Madison insulted me over the phone and laughed. He's high-earning and well-educated. Why not hand him over to me? We're twins. We've always shared everything. Don't say stupid things. I yelled back at Madison. I couldn't stand Connor being treated like an object, nor the notion that we had always shared everything. That's ridiculous. I was always just someone for Madison to dump the things she didn't want on. That night, I told Connor about this, warning him to be careful around Madison. But Connor seemed to take it lightly, laughing off my words. It's nice to be liked that much. Don't worry, Madison's not serious. It's not funny. You don't know what Madison might do. Do you doubt my feelings? It's okay because I said it's okay. Despite him being such a wonderful person, I felt like Connor had changed after meeting Madison. Connor would affirm everything when it came to Madison, just because she's my sister. Other than that, he was the same wonderful partner as always. But I was dissatisfied with how he changed whenever Madison was involved. Don't worry so much. But as Connor said, if he himself didn't sway, there was nothing Madison could do. Feeling unsettled by her words was proof I hadn't fully trusted Connor. So, I was admonished. Indeed, he was right. I decided to trust Connor and ignore Madison's words. Even afterward, Madison sent me spiteful messages, but I never replied. Fortunately, Madison didn't interfere with us, and I prayed we could become wonderful sisters while leading a happy married life. Years went by. After I turned 40, my parents told me that Madison had gotten married. By then, I had blocked her and wasn't in contact. Although we occasionally saw each other at our parents' home, Madison would insult me. Being nearly 40 and still unmarried, Madison had become resentful towards me, and it seemed she was avoiding me as well. I thought Madison, being quite picky, wouldn't marry, but I was genuinely glad for her when I heard she had found someone. I realized how terrible I had been when Grace got married, only after I got married myself. Moreover, through my parents, Madison apologized to me. After that, we started communicating again. Indeed, Madison had changed, becoming much calmer than before. It was as if she had returned to the Madison I once loved. I never thought the day would come when Madison and I could laugh together again, so I was very happy. Madison even introduced me to her husband. He was about 5 years our senior, named Gabriel. He seemed to care for Madison deeply, which reassured me. Having both married, Madison and I became closer. Our parents were very happy to see us getting along. I wanted to make up for the time we had spent apart. Then, a few years later, something happened. I became ill at work and had to leave early. I wanted to inform Connor, but he was out on business, so I left a message with a colleague. I went straight home. Upon entering the house, I immediately sensed something was off. It felt like there was someone inside, even though the house was supposed to be empty. Could it be a burglar? That thought flashed through my mind as I quietly entered. Listening closely, I could hear noises and voices coming from the bedroom. As I stood silently in front of the bedroom, I recognized Connor's voice coming from inside. But I couldn't bring myself to speak up. The nature of his voice drained the blood from my face. It was unmistakably the sound of an intimate moment. The creaking of the bed confirmed my fears. I didn't need to see inside to know what was happening, and my hands trembled. However, if Connor was cheating, I had to catch him in the act. With that thought, I carefully opened the door with my smartphone in hand, ready to record. What I saw inside the bedroom was even more shocking. "Madison is really cute, isn't she?" The voice became clearer as the door opened. Hearing Connor say her name, I froze. Now that he mentioned it, the female voice was indeed Madison's. Connor kept foolishly repeating Madison's name. Trembling, I recorded the scene and quietly left. I sat in the dining area in shock for a while. I was supposed to be home early due to feeling unwell, but that shock made me forget my illness. Staring blankly at my phone, I just waited for this nightmare to end. Then, a few minutes later, the bedroom door opened. "I'll head back to work now, so lock up," said a voice. "Okay. It'd be nice if we could live together soon." Hearing this, I hurriedly stood up. Noticing the noise, Connor and Madison saw me in the hallway. "Lee Grace, why are you here?" Connor exclaimed, turning pale. "Why? This is my house, right? But why is Madison here? Aren't you both supposed to be at work?" Madison looked away for a moment, but then smirked defiantly. "Why do you think? You wanted it from my own mouth, didn't you?" "Madison." Connor tried to stop her, but Madison wouldn't be silenced. "I've always hated how you look down on me. Happiness and Connor don't suit you. I'll take everything." With that, Madison declared. I just smiled at her words. "Is that so? Then I'll give you Connor, Lee Grace. But don't think you can take my happiness." Madison seemed annoyed by my retort, glaring at me. To that, I continued, addressing her directly. "Yeah, I sent the video to Gabriel. Let's discuss this as a group of 4 sometime soon." Madison's face turned pale instantly. "What do you mean?" "Just what I said. If you want Connor, Gabriel should know about this, shouldn't he? What have you done? Madison lunged at me. Madison, calm down. How can I calm down? Connor tried to stop her, but Madison was beyond reason. Just then, the smartphone inside Madison's bag rang. At that sound, Madison froze in place. Looks like Gabriel's calling, isn't it? Madison, pale-faced, hesitantly looked at her bag, but there was no sign of her answering the call. In the silent room, only the sound of the phone echoed. After a while, it stopped ringing, and then my phone rang. See? Since Madison didn't answer, now it's calling me. Grace, I'm truly sorry. Please forgive Madison. Can you somehow cover for her with Gabriel? If not, Madison will lose everything. Connor started making statements as if to protect Madison. Madison, standing next to him, began to sob bitterly, as if she were the tragic heroine. What Connor said made sense. Actually, Gabriel is not only Madison's husband, but also the president of the company where she works. If Gabriel learns about Madison's infidelity, divorce talks might start, and she might not be able to continue working at his company, especially now, during work hours. There's no room for sympathy, though it seems harsh. She did this knowing full well she could lose everything. I can't possibly cover for her. I said that. That's too harsh. Connor, as usual, tried to defend Madison. His words infuriated me, and I glared at Connor. Worried about her? Thinking Madison is the only one who's going to lose her family and jobs is a huge mistake. At my shout, Connor flinched, then started sweating profusely. It was as if he suddenly came to his senses, starting to break out in a cold sweat. He must have understood the meaning of my words. Just so you know, I've also sent the video to the company's main email address, including your department and name. What have you done? By then, Gabriel's call had ended. Connor and Madison stood frozen with a look of despair. After kicking them out, I called Gabriel. Sorry to disturb you at work. It's about the video, right? Yes. It involves Connor, doesn't it? Yes, I replied to Gabriel's gentle voice. I'm sorry for asking this of you. He said that. Actually, Gabriel had consulted me because he felt something was off with Madison. It might have been plausible for the old Madison, but the current Madison truly loved Gabriel. I didn't think she would cheat, and I had conveyed as much to Gabriel. But, just in case, he had asked me to gather evidence if Madison did something questionable. That's why I think I was able to film calmly. Please don't apologize. I'm glad I could capture evidence of Connor's infidelity. If you hadn't asked me, I probably wouldn't have thought to do so calmly. I told Gabriel. It would be a lie to say I wasn't shocked. It's shocking enough to discover an affair, let alone with one's own sister. I had every right to be angry. My sons will be home soon, so let's talk another time. I told Gabriel and hung up. Tears flowed endlessly, but for my sons and for my own future, I knew I had to be strong. That day, I went about my usual routines. And when the kids had settled down for the night, Connor came home. Were you with Madison? I asked him, and Connor, clearly in a bad mood, snapped back at me. I got called into HR because of you. The decision on my punishment will come later. What are you going to do about this? The way Connor turned the blame on me, making me out to be the villain despite his actions, made me almost laugh. Crying over such a man was a waste of time. There's nothing to be done. Do as you please. You understand the situation, right? If we divorce, I'm taking the kids. Still want to divorce? His attempt to use our sons as leverage was pathetic, and I told him so. What are you talking about? You think you'll get custody after likely losing your job? Divorce is a foregone conclusion. Stop being ridiculous. Connor had nothing to say. Of course. Getting caught in adultery during work hours, dismissal seemed inevitable. Was he still so clueless about the gravity of his actions? If that's the case, then he's incredibly foolish. I'll be leaving tomorrow. Wait a minute. Can't we consider starting over? Can't you forgive just one affair? Connor, now taking a submissive stance, began apologizing to the assertive me. One time, I asked back. According to Gabriel, Madison's behavior had been odd for several months. Given Gabriel's job involves mostly being out for sales, there's a good chance she might have been returning home like this. Just one, Connor responded weakly to my question, his eyes darting around. From the lack of confidence in his answer, it was clear it wasn't just once. It felt ridiculous to pursue it any further, so I dropped the subject. The next day, I told my sons about Connor's infidelity. They are in 6th grade now, old enough to understand that hurting and betraying others is wrong. I apologized for having such a conversation at this sensitive time in their lives, and they said they wanted to talk it over alone and went to their room. After just a few minutes, they came out with their bags packed and said, "We're on your side, Mom." I couldn't help but cry. The boys laughed and comforted me as I apologized again. Then, we went back to my parents' houses. My parents were speechless when they heard about Madison and Connor's actions. Despite being happy that we had become close as sisters again, I felt sorry, but Mom apologized to me, crying, "Madison hasn't changed after all. I'm sorry for always making you endure her." Cut ties with both Madison and Connor. We will keep our distance from Madison to the bare minimum, Dad said, and I felt relieved. From that day, I started commuting to work from my parents' home. Connor, perhaps on suspension, didn't come to the office, but called me multiple times instead. Ignoring him as I didn't have time to deal with it, he began to send messages day and night. "I love you, Grace. Let's live happily as a family of 4 again." I was insane. I was just deceived by that woman. "I don't know how to live without you, Grace." Perhaps these were what you'd call Romeo emails. I was almost fooled for a moment, but thanks to my sons laughing uproariously at those messages, I realized how ridiculous they were. However, I couldn't ignore him forever. Eventually, I had to meet him to sign the divorce papers. I made plans to meet Connor at a cafe on my day off. Choosing to meet at a cafe instead of going home was Gabriel's advice. He said that being in a public place would help keep the conversation calm. When Gabriel and Madison arrived at the cafe together, Madison had become so thin in just a few days, she looked like a different person. She must have fallen out of favor with Gabriel. Serves her right. Now, both Madison and Connor, please sign the divorce papers. It seemed Madison was also reluctant to divorce. To the two hesitating to sign, Connor said, "It's a misunderstanding, Gabriel. It's your choice to divorce, but we won't." "Are you still saying that?" "My sons and I no longer consider you family," I retorted. I addressed Connor's desperate attempts. Gabriel sighed deeply and said, "You could go to court, but it's clear you'll lose. Considering the alimony and legal fees for the divorce trial, can you afford it?" "Alimony for the divorce trial?" "Of course. You both betrayed your families. Madison to me and Grace. Connor, you'll have to pay us a proper settlement in the divorce trial. Madison started trembling silently. Her silence and weight loss now made sense. What am I supposed to do? I might be fired. How can I pay? Connor began to argue, pale-faced. You did this to yourself. Besides, you owe child support for both kids. Right, Madison? At my words, Madison flinched. You wanted to live together, right? You're welcome to have the house. I laughed loudly. And don't forget the mortgage payments. Connor was taken aback, probably having forgotten about the mortgage. Both sat sweating, pale and silent in front of the divorce papers. Later, Gabriel introduced me to a lawyer, and I managed to claim alimony and legal fees and finalize the divorce. Connor, who had resisted divorce so much, proposed to Madison immediately after our divorce was finalized. I knew he had liked Madison from the start. When did their affair turn serious? Hearing this, I felt nothing but disdain. Meanwhile, Madison, who had genuinely loved Gabriel, was abandoned and eventually lost her job too. Why did she end up with Connor despite loving Gabriel so much? Remaining puzzled, I asked Gabriel about it. He hesitated before revealing. Actually, she started complaining about you a few months ago. Really? Complaining about how you, who are useless, got married and even have kids. It's extravagant, he explained. Could it really be because of that? I wondered, but considering Madison's personality, it wasn't impossible. Yet, the thought that she went to such lengths just to set me up was horrifying. It was because I thought you might be in danger that I consulted Grace. But I never imagined it would lead to this with Connor. I'm truly sorry, Gabriel said apologetically. It's okay. It's over now. And Connor is to blame for taking up Madison's invitation as well. That concluded our conversation. Gabriel and I agreed to keep in touch for updates on the divorce compensation and legal consultations. According to him, the two, burdened with a substantial amount of divorce compensation, ended up marrying and living together. Madison was abandoned by her parents and had nowhere else to go. It seemed she reluctantly accepted Connor's proposal because she had no family left. From what the lawyer told me, Madison couldn't accept that she ended up divorcing Gabriel and marrying Connor, whom she didn't love, because of me. The lawyer mentioned getting hurled with abusive language every time he called her. While I felt sorry for the lawyer, he continued to support me firmly, perhaps because of Gabriel's presence, and I couldn't be more grateful. For a while, we'll still have to make calls to demand the divorce compensation, and it seems I'll continue to rely on their support. 5 years passed. The divorce compensation and child support were being paid on time, and my emotional wounds had largely healed. One day, after a long period of calm, the lawyer contacted me. Madison says she has something to talk to you about. I refused. Knowing her, it would likely end up with her using me as a verbal punching bag for stress relief. I decided never to trust or forgive Madison again, and asked the lawyer to convey my refusal. However, Madison insisted it was urgent, and Connor also requested a meeting on her behalf. Given their persistence, I reluctantly agreed. However, lacking the courage to meet them alone, I contacted Gabriel, feeling somewhat guilty for doing so after such a long time. He gladly agreed to accompany me, and so I met with them after a long while. Connor and Madison were sitting at the cafe with a solemn demeanor. When Madison saw my face, she looked slightly relieved. "What's this about? Why did you call me here? I asked, and Madison said, Actually, I've developed renal failure and need to undergo dialysis. I was taken aback. It's your fault. No, both of your faults, that Madison ended up like this. She couldn't sleep without drinking alcohol. And yet, because of the divorce settlement payments, she had to work. Your actions have destroyed her health. Connor angrily blamed us, but I thought it was their own doing. Gabriel seemed to agree, as he sighed and looked exasperated. So what? I'm not reducing or refunding the divorce settlement. Be thankful I agreed to installments. I stood firm, and Madison, crying, lowered her head. I'll pay the divorce settlement. Please, I'm begging you. Give me a kidney. What? I exclaimed loudly at her outrageous request. What are you talking about? There's no way I'd give it to you. When I refused, Connor said, You were born a twin with Madison for this reason. You have a duty to help her. What are you talking about? Who has been pushing all the unpleasant things onto me? Did Madison ever help me once in such situations? Don't talk about trivial matters. Madison's life is at stake here. Connor angrily retorted. Madison began to cry and plead, apologizing. Connor insulted me as heartless, pressuring me for the transplant as if threatening. At that moment, feeling as though I was being blamed, Gabriel spoke up. If she needs dialysis, then undergo dialysis. Do you understand how tough dialysis is? And do you understand how difficult a transplant is? Why should she risk her life for Madison? Their words left them speechless. I felt relieved with Gabriel's support and caught my breath. Moreover, Madison, you've repeatedly called Grace useless. Isn't it too convenient to ask for help only when you're in trouble? But that's Madison, you've destroyed Grace's happy life. Grace has no obligation to save your life. Madison broke down crying, and Connor was at a loss for words. Both of them must have thought that I would surely give them a kidney. If I had been alone, I might have been persuaded. Once again, Gabriel saved me. Take care then. Oh, and don't forget the transfer for this month's payment. With that, I got up and left. Whether I'm called heartless or a devil, I cannot forgive them both. I don't know what kind of life they will lead from now on, but I hope they never forget what they did and reflect on it. It seems Connor and Madison were both working part-time to make ends meet. But now that Madison can no longer work properly, their financial situation is dire. But that's their karma. Everything is the result of their actions. Their atonement won't end until they've paid the compensation ordered in the divorce settlement. I continue to live happily with my parents and sons. My parents no longer even mention Madison's name. However, it seems they are happy to see the twins getting along well. It's comforting to see a bond between my sons that Madison and I never had. I continue to keep in touch with Gabriel frequently. He's a genuinely good person, always thoughtful and considerate. It appears he has developed feelings for me, but I'm not ready to reciprocate them at this time. I don't want to cause any more upset for my sons. But in a few years, when they come of age, I hope to have the chance to think about my own happiness again.
Look at that broke company trying to act big. $300 in the bank. What a big joke. I'm here to withdraw $15 million. When I said that at the major bank, they looked down on me like I was some poor, insignificant business. The banker who served me this time had harassed me in the past too. I couldn't take it anymore. I decided I would give her a taste of hell and make her regret ever crossing me. My name is Letty Blythe. I'm 45 years old this year. Many of my peers are struggling to balance work with caring for aging parents, or are dealing with the loss of a parent and the changes that brings to family dynamics. But I lost both my parents when I was just 3 years old, so my memories of them are hazy at best. I have photos, so I know what they looked like. From what I can tell, they seemed like kind, gentle people. About a year after I entered the orphanage, one of the staff members told me, "Your parents were office workers and very hardworking. On their days off, they would take you to the zoo." But even hearing that, no memories of my parents came flooding back. Instead, most of my childhood memories are of the orphanage. After entering the orphanage, I was unbearably lonely being on my own. I loved animals. "I want to have a puppy." So little me would pester the staff, saying. But pets were strictly prohibited at the orphanage. So one of the staff gave me a stuffed dog toy instead. It had been sitting in storage and no other kid wanted it, but I instantly adored it. I basically never let go of that toy, carrying it with me everywhere. That much I remember clearly. Once I started elementary school, I did eventually resign myself to just keeping it in my room. But it remained my most cherished possession. Then, when I was in 5th grade, I got the idea to try making my own stuffed animals. I grabbed my school sewing kit and set to work crafting a stuffed puppy. It wasn't the prettiest thing. "You did such a great job on this." But one of the staff praised me, saying. Encouraged by that, I threw myself into making more stuffed animals. I got better and better each time. By high school, I was so obsessed that I joined the handicrafts club. In my senior year, I won an award at a crafting competition. That inspired me to seek out a job in the textile industry after graduation. I've had a variety of experiences since then to get to where I am now at my current company. Looking back, I'm amazed at how far I've come, to be honest. I hope to continue making a living in the future with the crafting skills that have sustained me through life. At least, that's how I feel. But lately, I've been tormented by this one particular person. Her name is Clarice. Clarice is a 50-year-old banker who lives in the luxury condo building right across from my place. I, on the other hand, am not living in any fancy home like that. My apartment is old, built over 30 years ago, and costs $500 a month in rent. This area used to just be open fields with a scattering of houses here and there. But about 5 years ago, housing complexes and high-end condos started popping up one after the other. My apartment building has been here since way before all that development. It still remains, surrounded by these newer high-rise buildings, without ever being renovated itself. Some might think that with such a nice luxury condo right there, I should just move into that instead. At first, I did briefly consider moving. But I ultimately decided against it. The rent is just too expensive, and I don't need all the fancy amenities that come with a luxury condo. Those condos apparently have tight security, observation decks with great night views, party rooms, and 24-hour concierge service. But I'm not interested in hosting parties or admiring vistas. Plus, my landlord upgraded to high security locks for each unit and installed security cameras out of crime concerns. My apartment doesn't have a grand entrance or anything, but for someone like me who doesn't keep expensive items at home, this is plenty. I can't justify paying over $2,000 a month in rent just to live in a luxury condo. Different lifestyles suit different people, after all. Clarice seems to be someone who likes surrounding herself with upscale things. The rings and necklaces she wears are all from high-end brands. Whenever she runs into me taking out the trash, "I just bought this new piece. I already got tired of the ring I got 2 months ago. She brags. At the same time, she looks down on me in my more modest attire. It's such a nuisance. Aren't you embarrassed to go around dressed like that? Should I give you some of my designer items? Actually, never mind. She made fun of me like this just last week. It was infuriating. On top of that, she knows my unit number. She probably saw me coming and going from my apartment by chance. Because of that, I had an exquisite French meal today. Ah, it was so delicious. She occasionally shows up at my door to boast. All I want is to relax at home, but having to listen to her insipid bragging ruins that. And she doesn't leave after 5 or 10 minutes. She blabbers on for over 20 minutes. When I saw that ring, I couldn't help but exclaim, "This is my destiny ring." Not destiny partner, destiny ring. Life can be funny like that, you know. She gets all worked up like this, talking in an overly loud, emotional voice. It bothers the neighbors. The walls in my apartment are thin, so if you're even a little loud, everyone can hear it. Excuse me, there are other residents here too, so could you please keep your voice down a bit? Also, it's already 8 p.m. and I'd like to eat dinner. Even when I say this, she pays me no mind. I'm graciously sharing my superior knowledge with you, and this is how you act. Should I tell you about the necklace I'm wearing right now too? She says ridiculous things like this, completely unwilling to listen. The other day, my next-door neighbor Maurice got fed up. Hey! You're being too damn loud. Can't you see Letty doesn't want you here? And angrily came over. Seeing the intimidating Maurice, Clarice's face filled with fear. I am so sorry. She let out a shriek and then fled at full speed. I felt relieved. Heh, that was nothing. We neighbors gotta look out for each other. But what's the deal with you and her? Well, actually, I gave him a quick rundown about her. Ah, she's one of those luxury condo people. Bit of a local celebrity, huh? But why is she so fixated on you? It's not like neighbors get that close these days. So here's the thing. I could understand his confusion. It's extremely rare for someone to be this persistent in harassing a neighbor just for seeming poor. The reason things have escalated to this point is because I had a run-in with her in the past. It was about 6 months ago. I had business at a major bank branch, so I stopped by the teller window. The teller who assisted me that time was none other than her. She greeted me. Hello. But I got the distinct feeling she was looking at me with a condescending gaze. However, I hesitated to point that out to a bank employee I was meeting for the first time. I figured I was probably imagining it, so I started to tell her what I needed. I have a 1 p.m. meeting scheduled with the branch manager. I'm Letty Blythe. I was told to let the front desk know and I would be shown to the conference room. I didn't think I said anything strange, but Clarice suddenly blew up at me. Huh? Don't you lie to me. Ms. Blythe already arrived a long time ago. What? I was at a total loss, getting scolded like that out of nowhere. I mean, I wasn't lying at all. Flustered, I checked my schedule book, wondering if I had the date or time wrong. But no, I didn't. Could you please double-check? I should have a meeting scheduled in the conference room at this time. I politely repeated my request, but she still refused to listen. I'm telling you. You're just a fake one, aren't you? Enough with the lies, tell me the truth already. No, I am the real one. I had important business to attend to, so I couldn't just say okay then and leave. I even showed my ID, but she claimed that was fake too and refused to believe me at all. As I wondered what to do, the branch manager, having heard the commotion, came running over. "I am so sorry, Ms. Blythe. Right this way to the conference room." He escorted me, so it worked out somehow. Later, I heard from the branch manager that a completely different person also named Blythe had a meeting scheduled with him from 12 p.m. that day. Clarice had been aware of that other Blythe, but had completely forgotten about my existence, apparently. After my discussion with the branch manager concluded, "I sincerely apologize for the misunderstanding." She did apologize to me, but with a sullen look on her face. It didn't seem like she was truly remorseful, so my frustration wasn't entirely resolved. However, it would be pointless to expect a heartfelt apology from someone who gets that angry at a stranger over a misunderstanding. I came to terms with that and let it go. But then, a week later, as I was taking out the morning trash, Clarice came dashing out of the luxury condo across the street, eyes sparkling. I remember my body going stiff with fear. Can I help you? I live in this condo building." "So you live in that apartment over there, huh? Turns out we're neighbors." Hearing that, I felt like I might faint. Sensing she was up to something, Clarice then said the most outrageous thing. "You made me into a laughingstock. How are you going to make it up to me?" "Huh? Because of me." The root cause was her misunderstanding in the first place, so her resentment was completely misdirected. "The branch manager scolded me, and regular customers said I was scary. It's all your fault." She glared at me with a look of bitter resentment, like a demon. From then on, she apparently saw me as her sworn enemy. She harasses me every chance she gets. It's a huge nuisance. I considered moving, but she only stops by 2 to 3 times a month at most. Factoring in the cheap rent and all, moving just because of her felt like a waste. Clarice herself seems to be keeping things to a level where I won't report her to the bank or be driven to move. I finally found a good little prey. "I'm going to have so much fun tormenting you." She said creepy things like that with a grin. Some people might think it's better to move in that case. However, I had heard certain rumors about her and the luxury condos. Even Maurice. "She's a real piece of work, targeting you like that. But I reckon you only gotta put up with it a bit longer. Might as well wait and see how it plays out." After hearing the whole story from me, said, "Still, trouble has a way of striking without mercy." I had another errand that took me to the major bank branch. As my bad luck would have it, Clarice was at the teller window. I instinctively wanted to leave, but it couldn't be helped. With an unpleasant smirk, "Please have a seat and wait. We'll call you when your number is up." Clarice handed me a number ticket and said, the bank was extremely crowded, so I thought it would take quite a while. And sure enough, I was right. Incredibly, I ended up waiting a total of 5 hours. I tried to kill time by working on my tablet and, with permission, going out to do some shopping partway through. But it was simply far too long. "Thank you for waiting for so long." She called for me with a smile, and I realized she had deliberately made me wait until the very end. However, pursuing the matter would be pointless since she clearly wouldn't apologize. And it would be a hassle to make a big scene at the teller window. Swallowing my frustration, I said, "I'd like to withdraw $15 million. It's quite a large sum, but I notified the bank I would be withdrawing it today. Please process the transaction." Even I realized the amount I stated was rather unrealistic, but Clarice gave me a condescending look. "A broke little company like yours is gonna try that? You've only got $300 in your account. What a load of hot air." "Huh? $300 in my account? That can't be right. What on earth is she talking about?" Excuse me, but I think you must be mistaken again. I'm quite certain I'm scheduled to withdraw $15 million today. Please double-check your records carefully. I implored her, but Clarice wouldn't listen. I'm not falling for some broke person's excuses. Go on, shoo! Get out of here! Wait a minute. Can I please speak to a different teller? Realizing she was a lost cause, I tried to seek help from someone else. But we only have trainees working today, and the branch manager is out. For someone spouting nonsense about $15 million, I'm the only one who can deal with you. She insisted. Indeed, the other bank employees were all young and giving me troubled looks. Don't you dare get involved, she told them forcefully. This person is just trying to pin her own mistake on me. She's actually the CEO of some broke company with only $300 in its account. With their colleague Clarice asserting this so strongly, truly no one else stepped in to help. As I wondered what to do, she said, "Go on, don't just stand there in silence. Leave. I don't want to look at some poor, compulsive liar." She actually tried to force me out. The people around me were giving me cold stares too. I realized I wouldn't get any support if I stayed there any longer. I decided to leave for the time being, but I couldn't take it anymore. I could feel the intense anger heating up my entire body. And so, I vowed to give her the full wrath of hell. The next day, as I returned to my office from the conference room during my lunch break, I casually glanced at my smartphone. I had accidentally left it behind and wanted to check if I had gotten any calls. To my surprise, there were over 30 missed calls, all coming in after 11 a.m. It was the bank trying to reach me. Figuring it must be about yesterday's incident, I immediately called them back. Then, I am so sorry about yesterday. I heard the voice of Clarice, now completely flustered and apologetic. I want to properly apologize to you in person, so please come to the bank. Understood. I'll head over right away. Luckily, I didn't have any afternoon appointments. I scarfed down my lunch and made a beeline for the bank. There I found a pale-faced Clarice and the branch manager. We are terribly sorry for yesterday. Please, right this way to the conference room. The branch manager showed me in, and we entered the conference room. As soon as I sat down, Clarice launched into a frantic apology. I am extremely sorry. To think I made the same misunderstanding again. I knew it. So who did you confuse me with this time? Hearing the details, it turns out the other Blythe she had mistaken me for before was involved again. Apparently that Blythe is the CEO of a company in such dire financial straits that it's on the verge of bankruptcy. That Mr. Blythe seemed so poor, with only about $300 in his account. I mixed him up with you. Are you truly remorseful? That's incredibly rude to the other Mr. Blythe too. When I said that coldly, Clarice and the branch manager apologized again. Letty Blythe is the president of a stuffed animal manufacturing company. I explained before that her business is doing well. The branch manager scolded her harshly. That's right. I currently run a stuffed toy maker. After graduating high school, I worked at a company that produced small trinkets and plushies to sell at gift shops. Eventually, wanting to make original products that would bring people joy, I established my own company. I chose to focus on stuffed animals because I've had an attachment to them since I was little. I hope that, like they did for me, stuffed toys can provide comfort to children who need it. By the way, the reason I needed to withdraw $15 million was due to various factors like transferring some funds to accounts at other banks and renovating our manufacturing plant. Even during the meeting that led to Clarice developing a grudge against me, I had discussed this matter. Since such a large sum of money was involved, I wanted to clearly explain the reasons for the withdrawal.
Still, that was a terrible misunderstanding. How could you get it so wrong? Well, since you live in that dirty, old apartment building, I just assumed your business must not be doing well.
Instead of simply apologizing, she said unnecessary things.
My company isn't that large, and I try not to be too extravagant for the sake of the future. It's not good to look down on people based on where they live.
When I said that in an irritated tone, the branch manager apologized again.
I am truly sorry for Clarice's behavior. She will be fired, so...
Yes. I hope you can forgive me in light of that. Clarice also apologized repeatedly with a desperate look on her face.
Is it because of the mistakes this time and last time? Or was it discovered that you were harassing me near my home? Harassing? Why would she say such an unnecessary thing?
It seemed they hadn't heard about that part, so I told them everything as payback. The branch manager.
I don't even know how to apologize. Stop bothering Ms. Blythe immediately.
Lectured her.
Yes. I won't interact with her anymore, so please forgive me.
Seeing Clarice drenched in nervous sweat and looking completely haggard, I felt a bit of catharsis. Incidentally, the reasons for her firing were habitual negligence of duties and bullying of colleagues. I later heard her warnings to the juniors not to get involved were simply because she wanted to be intimidating and throw her weight around. My incident was apparently the decisive factor in her termination. The bank is probably better off without someone like her. And so, she was officially fired sometime after that. 1 week later, at night. I got home late from work, arriving by taxi around midnight. Just then, I saw a woman with a suitcase and backpack emerge from the luxury condo across the street. Even from a distance, I could tell it was Clarice. But despite the late hour, she was wearing sunglasses. Because of that, she didn't seem to see in front of her very well. As she descended the stairs near the entrance, she took a hard tumble. The sight of her rolling down with her suitcase was quite comical. I couldn't help but laugh. The night was quiet, so even a small sound carried. Clarice seemed to notice me. She took off her sunglasses and marched over.
Hey, what are you laughing at?
Sorry, it was just funny seeing you fall like that. When I answered her honestly, Clarice's face turned red.
Don't laugh at other people's misfortunes. Instead of hanging out so late at night, hurry up and go home.
I can't help it, I was working.
More importantly, Clarice, what are you doing with sunglasses and so much luggage this late? Where are you going?
When I sharply questioned her. Oh,
I'm just going on a little trip.
She made a strained excuse.
You're clearly flustered. There's no public transportation running in the middle of the night like this. Rather than a trip, this has more of a midnight run vibe. It's not a midnight run. I'm just moving out.
She hastily denied it, but it must have been close to 3 a.m. No one moves out at this hour.
You must have some incriminating circumstances and don't want to be seen leaving. How can you read my mind like that?
She was shocked, but I think anyone could figure out that much.
Don't tell me, you got in a fight with your husband and he kicked you out? How do you know? This is getting creepy.
Hit with the truth, Clarice plopped down right there. But this isn't such a big deal either.
You'd argue with your husband sometimes, right? I saw you yelling near the entrance many times.
Indeed, living across the way, I inevitably catch glimpses of the luxury condo residents from time to time. Clarice would occasionally go out with her husband.
You are the one earning money, so it's no big deal. It's because you keep spending that we can't save no matter how high my income is." And they'd have shouting matches like, "You talk so loudly. I can hear it even from inside my apartment sometimes. I've never spoken to your husband, but I know his name is Terrence." As I calmly explained, she hung her head in embarrassment. "Oh no. I can't believe you overheard such ugly scenes. That's why I figured you'd end up divorcing and moving out eventually. Plus, a lot of people move out of there within 2 to 3 years." "They do? Could it be a haunted spot?" That must be it. I keep getting hit with misfortune because of evil spirits." She's letting her imagination run wild, but that's not it. "The rent there is really high, right? A lot of people can't maintain that standard of living and move out." As you'd expect, this luxury condo is for the wealthy. Temporarily successful investors and CEOs live there, but it seems difficult for them to keep paying over $1,000 a month in rent. Many move out within 2 to 3 years. Is that so? Well, I do have the financial means. If I hadn't gotten divorced, I could have kept living there normally. Clarice still puts on airs, but I can't help looking at her skeptically. Really? You were in quite a financial bind, weren't you? On what basis are you saying that? It's not good to make wild speculations. She argues back desperately, beads of sweat on her forehead. I have my reasons. First of all, you're always wearing brand name items, so I assume you spend quite lavishly. It's far more than a bank teller's salary could afford, right? How do you know the prices of brand name goods? She looks at me with the shock of discovering a new species. How rude. I'll have you know, I do business with my fair share of wealthy people. These days, you can easily look up the prices of brand name items online. That's true. As Clarice looks uncomfortable, I continue. If you're spending that extravagantly, it's clear you don't have much money. I don't know what your husband does, but he must have a high salary. You took advantage of that to splurge as you pleased, so you got kicked out. That's what I think. Whoa! You see right through me. She looks completely spooked, but she basically revealed all this herself. After all, I've seen Clarice and Terrence have flashy arguments in front of the entrance before. What do you mean? Get out! I'm at my limit with a wife who spends so much money without thinking of the future. Who do you think is earning that cash? They had that sort of exchange, and I've overheard similar conversations from time to time. So it was easy to imagine she got kicked out over money. After I explained all this, she looked utterly devastated. I thought people didn't get to know their neighbors these days, but you noticed so much. I do live right across from you. Sometimes I can't help but notice things. When I put it bluntly, Clarice covered her face with her hands and froze. How mortifying. To think I was such an open book. I heard it even when I didn't want to. Of course I'd find out if you're yelling that loudly. I retorted mercilessly, causing her to look even more ashamed. She tried to hide behind her suitcase. I wanted to sneak away because I didn't want anyone to know I got kicked out for being a spendthrift. Having everything brought to light is the worst. Too bad the person you least wanted to find out did. When I stated it plainly, Clarice shrank back further, looking even more uncomfortable. You've got that right. You really never know what life will bring. Well, you don't need to get all philosophical about your whole life. More importantly, if you're moving, shouldn't you get going? Passers-by have been glancing over here. And indeed, behind us, a man was looking our way with concern. In the middle of the night, two women were facing each other. One was trying to hide behind a suitcase.
Of course that would make someone uneasy. It's all right. I called out to him, and he left. But he still had a suspicious look on his face. She watched the scene unfold with a despairing expression.
Why are there people out so late at night?
This area has turned into a proper residential neighborhood. Sometimes there are folks who work late and come home in the middle of the night. As I explained what should have been obvious, she exclaimed, "I can't stay here any longer." And with that, she dashed off, disappearing into the darkness. She's a noisy one, but I'd be glad if she's finally gone for good. With that thought, I returned to my apartment. However, a month later, I spotted a figure pacing back and forth many times in front of the luxury condo. As soon as that figure saw me, they approached.
Clarice, is that you?
Indeed, it was none other than Clarice, who I thought had left for good. I had gone for a walk to enjoy the nice weather and was returning in high spirits, but now that was ruined. Actually, I did move out of this luxury condo, but I couldn't find a new job. So I thought I'd somehow get my husband to take care of me again and came here.
In the end, you're still relying on your husband, huh?
Well, good luck persuading him then. I let out an exasperated sigh and tried to leave, but Clarice stood in front of me. The truth is, my attempt at persuasion already failed. I was walking around wondering what to do when I ran into you. I see. There's nothing I can do for you, so please move aside. Not wanting to get dragged into her mess, I tried to dash past her to my apartment entrance. But she persistently blocked my path.
Wait! I need a little help.
Hearing those words, I couldn't believe my ears.
Did you forget what happened between us? Take a good look at your own actions. I know it's an unreasonable request. I'm not asking because I think there's a high chance. I'm betting on a slim possibility here. Why do you think there's even a possibility? I have zero intention of helping you,
I said coldly, trying to hurry into my unit. How cruel. But then she started to cry. It's humiliating for me too, you know. And yet, to say you don't want to help, you must have lost all sense of human compassion.
Are you saying it's my fault? Do whatever you want.
She talks as if acknowledging her own wrongs, but then says I've lost all sense of human compassion. It's clear she hasn't reflected at all. Dealing with someone like this is just a waste of time. Fed up, I pushed her aside and climbed the stairs.
Wait! You're really abandoning me!
She let out a loud cry and chased after me. But at that moment,
shut up! How many times do I have to tell you?
Maurice came bursting out of his apartment. As if on cue, two other residents also emerged.
I was taking a nap, and now I'm wide awake. You're that person who made a ruckus sometimes, right? Letty said you moved out, so why are you back?
Bombarded with remarks like these, Clarice froze in shock. You don't have to say all that out of nowhere.
No, that's not it. We've been bothered by your yelling for ages. We have a right to complain.
Maurice angrily gave her a scary look, causing Clarice to cower.
I suppose so. Still, you neighbors sure are close.
This apartment building is pretty old. Some people have lived here for over a decade. The residents have known each other a long time. It's a rare apartment complex these days with such a tight-knit community. As I explained in a cold, matter-of-fact tone, Maurice and the two other residents closed in on Clarice.
Get out!
They said in a voice that seemed to rumble from the depths of the earth. Even Clarice realized this was bad news. I'm so sorry. Her body trembling, she fled. Don't you ever come back. I yelled after her, retreating back. Perhaps thanks to the power of this neighborhood watch, Clarice stopped showing her face around the apartment. I didn't know what happened to Clarice after that, but I found out by chance when I went on a business trip. I entered a restaurant to have lunch, and there she was, working as an employee. Seeing me must have really thrown her off.
"Why are you here?"
Because she screamed. Of course, the male manager scolded her. But she seemed to have completely lost her composure. She dropped a glass of water, knocked over a salad. Mistakes left and right.
"I'm terribly sorry."
She apologized over and over.
"You're completely incompetent. You're fired."
But the manager berated her. The light may never shine on Clarice's life again. I couldn't shake the feeling. As for me, I'm still running my company to this day, steadily growing the business. A stuffed animal we recently released is selling well. I'm grateful we've entered mass production. I'm getting messages of thanks from children across the country, which makes me glad I chose this line of work. My relationships with the apartment residents are still good too. We often remark how nice it is that things have become peaceful. I'm so happy to be able to spend ordinary days without incident. Clarice was a real nuisance, but she taught me just how precious a mundane everyday life is. In any case, I'm fortunate to have found the best possible home. I want to live with a sense of gratitude for that. With such thoughts in mind, I'm working hard again today. I'm right in the middle of visiting my daughter's boyfriend, Evan's house. Let's eat together, as a new family. Risa, Evan's mom, taunts me by devouring pizza with relish. Yet, for some reason, I'm the only one with familiar instant noodles in front of me. My daughter, Wendy, sits opposite me, silent and head bowed. Risa leans in to look at her face. "Oh, Wendy, what's wrong?" "Don't worry, let's eat. From now on, we'll be your family instead of Rothy." Wendy looks at Risa coldly, ignores her words, walks briskly to my side, and says to me in a clear voice, "Let's go home." To which I nod. Sure. As we head to the entrance, an agitated Evan blocks our way.
"Wendy, what are you doing?"
"Thinking of going home.
To avoid wasting any more time."
Huh?
"Do you even realize what you're saying?"
Evan raises his voice in irritation, grabs her arm. Then she shakes off his hand and shouts loudly,
"You're the one who even understand what you're doing to whom?"
And so, Wendy and I confront Evan and his family with a certain truth. I am Rothy, 50 years old. I've raised Wendy alone since my husband died of an illness 18 years ago. At the time of his death, Wendy was just 7 years old. Not wanting to limit her future just because I was a single mother, I wished for financial stability, at least. Also, to fulfill my husband's dream. If only things could get on track. With that determination, I worked desperately, relying on grandparents and after-school programs. During that time, I made Wendy feel lonely many times. Why doesn't mom wait at home for me? Everyone else's mom says welcome back at home. One summer day, when Wendy was in the 2nd grade, she said to me with her lower lip bitten and tears in her eyes. It felt like a blow to the head. Too absorbed in work every day, I was losing sight of what was important. The most important thing was Wendy, yet I made her face look like this. Sorry. I'm so sorry, Wendy. Since then, I gradually started to cut back on work where I could. Still, compared to families with both parents, I think we had less relaxed time together. Even when I got home early, there were times I had to work at home. Sorry, Wendy. After finishing overtime and rushing home to manage dinner and baths, I'd hurry Wendy to bed and finally catch a breath, only to see her sleeping peacefully. Looking at her, I was tormented by an indescribable sense of guilt. She was still in elementary school, and I couldn't let her be as spoiled as she deserved. But I had to work. Without it, we couldn't live. If I fell ill, our household would be over. Every day was a struggle. But thanks to those efforts, by the time she graduated from middle school, my job stabilized, and we began to see financial ease. As a high schooler, Wendy had become quite independent.
"Mom, aren't you working too much?"
she would say, worried about my health. I felt a sense of reliability in her, who seemed older than her age, but also a bit of loneliness. From there, Wendy continued to grow without needing my worry, making her own way. Now, Wendy is turning 25 this year. She has fit in well at her job and adapted to living alone. Parents often think separation comes later than it does. At this rate, Wendy getting married might just happen in the blink of an eye. I sometimes imagine her in a wedding dress, and it brings tears to my eyes. Yet, I haven't heard any boyfriend stories from her. I thought marriage talks might still be a while away. Then, out of the blue, she suddenly contacted me. Initially, it was just casual chat, but suddenly, she went quiet and then shyly began. "Actually, there's someone I'm thinking of marrying." The news was so surprising, I almost screamed. Wendy's sudden marriage talk was honestly delightful.
"Tell me, what's he like?"
Truth be told, I wanted to grill her for details. But, suppressing my curiosity, I asked. Wendy seemed to ponder for a while, then after a pause, she answered.
"He's a colleague from work, competent, I guess. He confessed to me, and we've been dating for a bit." "That's wonderful."
As her parent, it might sound strange, but I believe Wendy has grown up to be a considerate, intelligent, and kind person. The good reputation I occasionally hear about Wendy at her workplace is all positive. Wendy is often requested by clients because she's polite, serious, and reliable. I was proud to know that she was sincerely committed to her work.
"There's a lot I can learn from her in terms of work."
"Is that so?" Wendy's voice was lively as she talked about him. I wondered what kind of person Wendy's choice was. I wanted to know more. After all, this was the first boyfriend Wendy had ever told me about. I was very curious about him, but I didn't want to put any strange pressure on her, so I refrained from asking. Eventually, if anything progressed, Wendy would tell me. That's what I thought as I watched over her. Then, a few weeks after the initial contact, she reached out to me again.
"Sorry for the suddenness, but, I'd like you to meet him sometime."
The invitation came much sooner than I had expected. I was a bit surprised, but also pleased.
"Oh, that's wonderful. Just let me know when. I'll make room in my schedule. I'm looking forward to it."
But, despite my excitement over the phone, Wendy's reaction seemed complicated for some reason. When I asked what was wrong, she awkwardly answered, "Just don't get your hopes up too much. I mean, I hope you won't be disappointed, Mom." It was an unexpected response.
"What? Oh, come on. I'm not that overprotective, and I don't have high expectations. Most importantly, I trust your choice."
"Yeah, thanks." The frustrating thing about phone calls is not being able to see the other person's face. I couldn't tell what kind of expression Wendy had right now. Why would my always positive daughter make such a negative preface about introducing her boyfriend to me? It's not like Wendy. Though it crossed my mind, she might just be nervous. I convinced myself of this and eagerly awaited the day I would meet Wendy and her boyfriend. And the day of the family meeting with him arrived. "I'm nervous. Does my outfit look okay?"
"Don't worry, it suits you well. Besides, I'm the one who's more nervous."
We headed to a well-known restaurant in the area, smiling and looking at each other. It's a place often used for business discussions. Initially, we had planned to meet on a weekend for a leisurely chat. However, he was busy on weekends, so we ended up meeting after work. A little after we arrived, Wendy's boyfriend showed up.
Nice to meet you, I'm Evan.
Nice to meet you, I'm Wendy's mom. I'm glad to meet you. As I bowed, Evan smiled and greeted me back. With his tall figure and a suit that fit perfectly, he was a modern-looking man. His friendly demeanor was exactly that of a likable young salesman. Despite what Wendy had said earlier, I was taken aback by how pleasant he seemed. Such a nice person. What was she worried about?
We've only been dating for a short time, but I'm considering marrying Wendy in the future. I'm really glad to meet you, Rothy, today.
I'm glad you reached out to us too. It's reassuring to hear that he's not just playing around, but considering marriage. Serious, reliable, and interesting to talk to. Despite being such a nice guy, what was she worried about? He seemed like a very nice young man. With that thought, I was enjoying our conversation. However, as the alcohol flowed and the conversation got livelier, things started to turn odd. Evan's face turned red, and he was clearly in high spirits.
You know, when I first heard she was a single mother, I honestly felt a bit reluctant. But I'm glad you're a good person. Eh? Oh, right.
I almost dropped my glass. Even though alcohol was involved, it's not something you'd expect to be said at a first meeting. I think my face must have stiffened at that moment.
Hey, Evan.
Wendy quickly placed her hand on his shoulder. But he shrugged off her hand with a shake.
Come on, I'm giving a compliment here. Wendy, you're always so particular about these things.
It wasn't she being particular. I thought to myself. She sighed and held her head in her hands. Evan often makes careless remarks. I'm sorry, Mom. Oh, it's okay. Saying I wasn't bothered would be a lie. I've faced prejudice against single mothers many times before, but it never gets easier. It always pierces deeply into my heart. In the slightly tense atmosphere, only Evan seemed to enjoy his drink. It was the moment I first felt a sense of discomfort towards him. At first, I thought he was an impeccable young man. But as the alcohol settled, his mouth began to reveal various things. There were moments when I almost wanted to tilt my head in confusion.
Wendy, she's too good at her job. She's well regarded at work, but as a boyfriend, it feels like I'm being overshadowed.
As he said, leaning on the table. It seemed he didn't notice my confusion at all. Perhaps he didn't care. But she is working hard too. I followed up with a bit of irritation, but Evan waved his hand dismissively. You don't get it. Wendy is working too hard. And, you know, women should have a bit of vulnerability, right? It makes them cuter. Wasn't it like that back in your days, a long time ago? A long time ago. It felt like being treated as an old person. Not incorrect, but not a pleasant feeling. Wendy tried to glare at him to stop, but Evan, finishing his glass of alcohol, seemed utterly satisfied. I wonder. But times have changed. It's different from our days, as you say. Well, your time was decades ago. But I still think women shouldn't stand out more than men. By the end, I could only respond with a wry smile, completely dumbfounded. After returning home, Wendy called to apologize. I'm really sorry, Mom. It's okay. I was happy to meet him. This was the truth. I was honestly happy to meet her partner. But I couldn't wholeheartedly support them. Thinking of that person spending his life with Wendy, I couldn't feel blessed. Sensing my heart, Wendy added an excuse for him. Evan has been having a tough time at work lately. He's usually much calmer. I see, he's tired. It can't be helped. I'm sorry. If alcohol reveals one's true nature, what should I do? They said they were considering marriage. But is he really the right partner for her? Anxiety spread through my heart, but I couldn't say this to Wendy herself. It lacked delicacy, but there wasn't enough to criticize. I guess all we can do is watch a little longer, I murmured to myself, sighing. I thought to observe for a while longer. But a few weeks after that family meeting, Wendy brought surprising news. Actually, Evan proposed to me yesterday. He wants you to come with me to his family's place next time. Are you saying you're going to marry him? I almost blurted out my concern for Evan, but chose my words carefully. You're saying you want to marry him? If Wendy herself wishes it, it can't be helped. But as a parent, could I send off my daughter with these doubts? Asking hesitantly, after a few seconds, Wendy said in a small voice, Actually, Mom, there's been something on my mind recently that I couldn't tell you. What? Hearing a certain fact from her, I decided to act immediately. For my precious daughter. There's no time for hesitation. And a few days later, Wei visited Evan's family home. I'm glad you could come. Evan came to pick us up on foot from the nearest station to his family's home. Wendy, Evan, and I walked to his home. Our parents are so eager about the marriage, waiting for it to happen soon. My mom, even before meeting Wendy, thought of her like a real daughter. Wendy mentioned that marriage was still on hold, but Evan and his parents seemed all in. I'm looking forward to meeting them. Imagining the upcoming events, I smiled vacantly. After about a 10-minute walk, we arrived at his family home. As he said, his parents greeted us with smiles. Oh, she's quite small and thin, but such a cute young lady. You must be Wendy. Nice to meet you. Wendy responded calmly with a smile, but I was shocked. To comment on Wendy's appearance in front of me, her parent, at the first meeting. Silently staring, Evan's mother, Risa, seemed to notice me and smiled in my direction. So, you're Wendy's mother, right? Yes. As Wendy and I awkwardly interacted, Evan's father, Mike, interjected. Well, if you eat lots of delicious food here, you'll get a more robust physique. Anyway, come on Wendy, let's go inside. Hurry. Ah, yes. Excuse us. Mike works at the same company as Wendy and Evan, but in a different department, so it seems today is the first time they've met face to face. To comment on someone's appearance at the first meeting, especially as a couple, what kind of people are they? I was taken aback, and Evan said to me, What's wrong? Come on, Rothy, don't be shy. Our house is quite nice for this area, but you don't have to hold back. Did he think I was overwhelmed? No, I was just surprised by his odd parents. I never imagined being commented on my daughter's appearance at a first meeting. Right, let's go in. Holding back my bubbling feelings, I stepped into the room. True to their boasting, the house was spacious and beautiful. This is quite different from your childhood home, so it might take some time to get comfortable, but you'll be fine. You'll get used to it. Risa glanced at me and then hugged her shoulder. Are they implying we live in a shabby house because we're a mother-daughter household? Maintaining such a large house is tough, but Wendy, you'll manage, right? You've always done household chores, haven't you? That's normal for a single-mother family, right? Poor thing. I wanted to retort, but I held back. Wendy started to say something, but before she could, Risa pushed her back towards the living room, speeding up their pace. You must be hungry, right? Sit down, sit down. The living room table was laden with pizzas. We ordered from a famous local shop because Wendy was coming. It's a special day, after all. Indeed, the pizzas looked expensive. Guided to our seats, Wendy and I noticed something amiss.
What's this?
Pointing at what was placed before me, Evan's family all laughed the same way. In the world, there are all sorts of people, you know? You've heard it, right? Living in different worlds. Today, we thought Wendy and you should experience that. Risa exclaimed joyfully. Next to her, Mike and Evan, sitting by Wendy, watched the scene with amusement. Their intentions were too clear, and I couldn't help but laugh.
I see. So, famous pizzas in front of everyone, and instant noodles in front of me.
At my words, Evan clapped. Exactly. You're quick to catch on. Instant noodles represent Wendy and Rothy's past, and the famous pizzas represent our family and Wendy's future with us. It's simple, right? Wendy sat silently, head bowed. I remained silent too, glaring at Evan's family. Thinking they had won, Risa said brashly.
Let's eat together as a new family.
Evan's family began eating the delicious-looking pizza as if to show off to me. Noticing my stiffness, they raised their voices in an exaggerated tone. Your portion just had water added, so it'll be ready in about 3 minutes. You're used to it, right? Sorry, but we'll start without you.
Come on, Wendy, eat up.
With that, Risa peered into Wendy's face. At that moment, Wendy slowly stood up. Risa looked at her curiously. Oh, Wendy, what's wrong? Don't worry, eat up. From now on, instead of her, we'll be your family. Wendy looked at Risa coldly, ignoring her words, and briskly walked to my side, saying to me in a clear voice,
Let's go home.
I nodded in agreement. Sure. As we headed for the entrance, an agitated Evan blocked our path.
Wendy! What are you doing?
Thinking of going home.
To avoid wasting any more time. What? Do you even realize what you're saying?
Evan, visibly irritated, raised his voice and grabbed her arm. She shook off his hand and shouted loudly.
You're the one who don't understand what you're doing.
Evan looked momentarily surprised, then scoffed.
Are you going to complain again about being disrespected? Can't help it, can you? This is like a ritual for your sake.
What? When Wendy glared at him, Evan shrugged his shoulders resignedly.
You always brag about your mom, but after all, she's just a poor single mother, right? Moreover, a widow who hasn't been able to remarry even after decades. We're inviting you from that pitiful world to our wealthy one, and you're still unsatisfied?
A widow who hasn't been able to remarry. Some people might see it that way. Indeed, being a single mother, I've often been shunned and looked down upon. But actually, there have been people who have shown interest in me. However, since my husband passed away, Wendy has always been my top priority. There are many benefits to remarriage, but also not a few disadvantages. After much thought, I had decided not to remarry until she did. And Wendy herself knew that. Wendy, still staring at Evan, let out a big sigh.
I thought you were capable at work, but it turns out you're this useless in private. What did you just say?
Evan, his face turning red with anger, was met with a questioning look from Wendy.
You separate work and private life? But you know, you should think carefully from now on. It's hard to tell where work and private life connect. Are you threatening me? What connection could possibly exist between an old woman like her and my job?
Wendy looked at me and nodded. It seemed there was no need for silence anymore. I turned to Evan, cleared my throat once, and smiled.
Actually, even though we've just met, your company and our company have a deep connection. My company?
Evan's face, which had been red until a moment ago, suddenly turned pale.
What do you mean? The company? Wendy is cautious, so she hadn't told you. Actually, your company is a subsidiary of ours.
Our company, I say, but in reality, it was something my late husband founded. Interested in the apparel industry, he had slowly planned and started the business since his student days. The company was doing fairly well, but when my husband passed away mid-dream, I took over. I don't have my husband's sense for business. At first, it was a real struggle. But I desperately wanted to continue what he left behind. I thought if the company stabilized, we could be financially secure. It was tough managing work while raising young Wendy, but with help from those around us, we eventually got on track. Recently, the business has been booming.
Don't lie! Wendy never said anything about that.
Evan looked at her in a panic, but she didn't meet his eyes and countered.
I don't like being treated specially because of it. Only the CEO, Christopher, knows about this in our company. What? The CEO knows about you?
Wendy nodded, then gave me a signal.
By the way, Christopher has been a fan of Mom for a long time. I was the reason he never made a move. Hey! Don't say unnecessary things.
Actually, Christopher had confessed to me several times after my husband passed away.
I can't consider it until Wendy is grown up.
I had declined, thinking it would make personal life awkward, but we've maintained a good relationship as friends since he acts normally around me. Evan's mouth flapped open and shut, his eyes darting around.
Your mom, the parent company's CEO. And CEO is a fan of you, Rothy?
Yes.
Now that you and Wendy won't be getting married, can you stop calling me Rothy?
Evan was completely confused. But there was more to be addressed. I almost left due to their treatment, but I had something else to ask him. I had come today specifically for this reason.
Evan, you seem to have a good reputation at work, but apparently, you've been doing whatever you want with it. Ah.
Evan froze, his face turning pale. Clearly, he knew what I was talking about. His eyes flickered uncertainly.
I heard you've been approaching various dispatch workers. Surely, many would be happy to accept your advances. How do you know that?
Evan's eyes widened. He glanced at his parents for a moment, but then shook his head at me.
It's a misunderstanding. I did approach them. But that was to improve the atmosphere at work.
His flustered demeanor was suspicious. How could he lie so blatantly? If he was inviting people like this, it's no wonder anyone would be suspicious of this man. But I was almost deceived by him at our first meeting. If dispatch workers fell for his masked state, it's understandable. He's still frantically making excuses.
You made excuses to Wendy in the same way, didn't you?
Wendy, being honest and serious, trusted him. However, feeling anxious again about the marriage, she consulted me at that time.
After hearing everything from Wendy, I became very anxious. So, I hired a detective to investigate you after your proposal. That's an invasion of privacy.
Evan was frantic. This reaction alone should have been telling, but the results were as expected. He had physical relationships with several girls.
Some were even hinted at contract extensions by you, despite you having no authority to promise that. It's sad they were all deceived.
Evan, looking down and trembling, suddenly raised his head and yelled.
So what? That just motivates them more at work. I'm not doing anything wrong. In fact, I'm helping the company.
To think he would deny and justify himself, I was appalled. How many dispatch workers has this man manipulated?
Dispatch workers are, in a way, employees entrusted to the company by their agencies. You seem to look down on them, but they are not people who deserve such treatment. What? That's just a pretty speech. Dispatch workers are just a bunch of people who couldn't become full-time employees, right? In other words, a collection of lower-quality people. We, the full-time employees, are obviously superior.
This person is beyond redemption. Even Evan's parents, who were nodding in agreement behind him, were incomprehensible to me. Perhaps he received such education from a young age. Living in different worlds and looking down on others to bask in their sense of superiority. It would be a waste of time to say anything to such people.
It seems it will take time for you to understand. But maybe you'll grasp it quickly if you find yourself in their position? What? Well, according to your standards, you'll be below dispatch workers, right? As you said, the lowest tier?
Evan looked at me with desperate eyes, shaking his head.
What do you mean? Do you think the company will continue to employ someone who has been so involved with dispatch workers? You're fired. CEO is also furious. That can't be. Wait. That's a lie, right? Impossible.
Evan tried to grab my arm, but Wendy pushed his hand away.
Don't touch my mom with your filthy hands. We live in different worlds. It's good. We're not in the same lowest world as you. No, wait, Wendy.
Evan, tearful and begging, received no glance from her.
I thought you were a wonderful person at first. I was deceived by that, but now I feel nothing. Let's go, Mom.
As Wendy pulled my hand, Evan's parents stepped in to stop us.
Wait, Wendy. He will change from now on. That's right. He might have done something stupid, but he's a promising guy for the future. It's a waste to give up on him now! You'll regret it later!
The parents were in a panic. No wonder. Evan and his father were the main income earners for the family. With Evan being fired, the income for Evan's family would drastically decrease. The days of boasting about famous pizzas would be over. Mike, in particular, had another worry. I stood in front of the parents and told Mike.
Did you think it wouldn't come out? What are you talking about! Evan's not the only one doing foolish things, right? A foolish family, indeed.
Mike was sweating on his forehead.
Please, don't let the CEO know about me. It's all already known. Good luck job hunting as a family. But, in this industry, rumors spread quickly, so re-employment might be difficult.
Is there a gene for bowing? Evan and his father knelt down together, resembling each other even in their posture. As I left the room and looked back, their figures were strikingly similar from a distance. Later, Evan and his father were both fired together. Not just because of the issue with dispatch workers, but various small deceits had also come to light. Despite being well paid, both became unemployed at once, plunging their standard of living to rock bottom. They had to sell their house and now live in an old apartment, the three of them together. It'll be a long while before they can afford pizza again. Incidentally, both members of the Evan family were regarded as capable workers on the surface, so their dismissal caused quite a stir within the company. For me, the future of Evan and his family holds no interest. My primary concern was whether Wendy was taking the shock too hard. That was the only thing on my mind. However, it seems that worry was unnecessary.
I need to gain more experience. It was my lack of experience that got me deceived by someone like that.
Saying so, she has been actively going out for meals with colleagues and friends introduced by others, seemingly to meet new people. For my daughter, her positive and reliable outlook is admirable. This is the Wendy I know. As for me, following this incident, "It's time for you to let go," she told me. "It might sound odd coming from me, especially after what just happened, but if there's someone you want to marry, I truly want you to do so. I'm already 25, so there's no need for any hesitation or worry on my part." Somehow, Wendy seems to have taken to heart Evan's derogatory comments about me being a widow who couldn't remarry. While I don't necessarily have a desire to marry, the thought of spending the rest of my life with someone does appeal to me. Pushed by her support, the next time he invites me out for a meal, maybe I won't make up an excuse and will accept instead. After decades of knowing him, perhaps with him, I could spend a happy and peaceful life in my later years. That's what I've come to think.
Next month, you'll get to meet your 10th grandchild.
Suddenly, I noticed her belly was swollen, and Mary was happily rubbing it. The room was small, and with 4 children and 9 grandchildren around, I hadn't noticed. She was already in her final month.
Wow!
Surprise, joy, and then an overwhelming anxiety all hit me at once.
Well, I hadn't seen you in about a year, so I never got the chance to tell you. It's a boy.
Live long, Grandma.
Yes, indeed.
Everyone present rejoiced and celebrated this happy news. Amid the exchanged words of happiness, I couldn't fully suppress the complex feelings inside me. The truth was, my eldest son Tom had been continuously taking money from me, depleting my savings. Life had been a struggle day by day. I wish I could give Mary a present, but I no longer had the means. Never did I expect to feel so miserable at such a joyous gathering. I felt utterly pathetic and was on the verge of tears. I quietly left the room and went upstairs. Tom's door, slightly ajar, caught my eye. What state was his room in now? As I slowly opened the door, the devastated room was revealed. Stunned, tears I had been holding back rolled down my cheeks. Then, I heard someone coming up loudly from downstairs. At that moment, various thoughts raced through my mind, and one possible outcome crossed my mind. That just couldn't happen. In a split second, I jumped off the balcony. My name is Kate. A widow in my 60s, I lost my husband a few years ago. For about 3 years after his death, I was in a slump. But realizing I couldn't go on like that and encouraged by a close neighbor, I decided to take a part-time job. Now, I work part-time at a supermarket, which gives me something to look forward to every day. I enjoy the small talks with customers lining up at the cash register.
"Fish is cheap today, isn't it?"
I would initiate conversations. This made even the busiest of housewives feel relaxed, and I was happy about it. A man in work clothes came to buy a big hamburger for lunch. He seemed to be in his mid to late 30s. His suntanned face looked robust, reminding me of my son Tom. I have 2 sons and 2 daughters, 4 children in total. Raising them was a struggle, but I managed to get all 4 through to college. My second son, eldest daughter, and youngest daughter each found wonderful partners and got married. Now, they're blessed with children and are very busy every day. Only my eldest, Tom, has no desire to marry and lives with me. He is very caring, perhaps because he is the eldest. He takes the initiative to help with things I don't understand, like internet and smartphone settings. Also, he liked to spend his money on hobbies. His salary and bonuses often went to his fishing hobby.
"I bought a new reel again."
He was happily unpacking a parcel that had arrived today, admiring his new gear.
"It's fine to spend on your hobby, but are you saving properly?" "I am. I've also started some investment savings."
He had been managing his finances well, unknown to me, and contributing to the household. I was relieved to know he was managing his money properly.
"Are you going sea fishing again this weekend?"
"Yeah, I'll be going." Just like the man in work clothes, Tom's face and arms were sunburned. I could tell he enjoyed spending the day out with his friends, fishing under the sun. It was healthy, and that was what mattered most. Be careful not to fall into the sea.
I know.
Tom inspected his new fishing gear one by one, his eyes sparkling. He looked like a little child beholding a treasure. Beside him, I happened to glance at my planner. The first Sunday of last month was my birthday. On this day, my married children and grandchildren came over, and we all celebrated my birthday together. They insisted on celebrating every year without fail, so it has become a tradition. Especially my youngest daughter, Mary, was enthusiastic about it.
It's only once a year, Mom,
she would say, and also invite her sister and brother. With a total of 9 grandchildren, the house felt a bit cramped with everyone in it. But that was the only day we could all gather. I try to think it's nice once in a while. Despite everything, having a large family is something I'm happy and grateful for. Thanks to them, I always look forward to the next birthday right after one ends.
To still look forward to birthdays at my age.
I murmured to myself and couldn't help but laugh, even though I was alone. Looking back, I think that moment was the peak of my happiness. Amidst days of cherishing happiness, it came unexpectedly. On a day when spring was supposed to be near, yet cold rain fell. When I returned home from my part-time job, Tom was sitting in the living room. In the dark, head in hands. He was muttering something. Tom? What's wrong?
I did nothing wrong. It's him.
Sensing something serious, I quickly turned on the light and made him some hot cocoa. In the bright room, I saw that Tom's hair and clothes were wet from the rain. His usually vibrant, sun-kissed face looked pale and drained. Then, I took my time to listen to him. Shockingly, he had been laid off.
My boss tricked me. And then, it was actually his mistake, but I got blamed.
But can't you apologize and ask for another chance?
It's no use. It was a pretty big deal, and they said it's irreversible.
That's terrible.
I'm done. I can't trust anyone anymore.
I couldn't stop him from crying. Nor could I tell him not to. It was the first time I saw Tom so defeated. How could I make him understand that I knew how he felt, betrayed by a boss he trusted? For now, I suggested he take a warm bath. Then, Tom ate a little dinner and went to bed early. It was a night when Tom, who had been so positive about work and hobbies, changed completely. From the next day, he mostly stayed in his room. It seemed he spent his days in a daze, possibly shocked, not even trying to look for a new job. He stopped going fishing. Fishing gear boxes were carelessly thrown in a corner of the living room. Could it be that he would remain shut-in forever? I never imagined the lively Tom becoming a shut-in. Could it really come to this? However, my fears became reality, and Tom gradually stopped coming out of his room. When I called out to him through his door, I could hear him shouting back.
I can't trust anyone anymore. I don't want to work.
But maybe it'd be good to go outside, even just a little.
Leave me alone.
After that, Tom didn't respond to me anymore. I kept going to my part-time job while Tom was shut in. Being at work was a relief. Talking with colleagues and having casual conversations with customers was soothing. But the moment I clocked out and headed home was the most depressing. Walking home slowly, shoulders drooped. I was desperate for Tom to recover. Seeing the man in work clothes coming to buy a hamburger every lunchtime made me feel inexplicably sad. What should I do? I never imagined my son, an adult, would become a shut-in. I was at a loss, not knowing who to consult. I thought about asking his siblings, but I didn't want to burden them with unnecessary worry. They have their own families. It wouldn't be fair to involve them in Tom's issues. Tom? You're there, right? Trying to do something, I stood in front of Tom's room upstairs. Come down and eat something, at least. No matter how much I called, there was no answer.
Today it's pizza.
Then, a dull sound. Tom had hit the wall. I was startled and stared at the door. Was he saying to leave him alone? I wasn't sure, but something must have upset him. Tom. I'll leave the pizza on the kitchen table. Heat it up and eat it later. I made sure my voice didn't tremble as I said this and went downstairs. I just wished for Tom to return to his old self. A few days later, on my day off, Tom came out of his room. His hair was messy, sticking out everywhere. And his beard had grown, making his face look unkempt. Still in his pajamas, he opened the fridge, grabbed 3 cans of beer, and went back to his room. I worried if he was drinking like that every day. I knocked on Tom's door at lunch and dinner time. You need to eat something nutritious.
Shut up! You don't understand how I feel.
Don't just drink. Why not go fishing like you used to?
Do you really hate me that much?
It's not that. I just want you to be your energetic self again. I was about to say that when Tom came out of his room.
I'll go out then. Happy now?
With that, Tom stormed out of the house. Where was he going in his pajamas? Without even telling me his destination? What am I supposed to do now? All I could do was murmur to myself in the living room. If my husband were still alive, what would he have said in such a situation? Looking at his photo for help yielded no response. It must have been showing on my face at work because one day, the manager asked me, "Your expression has been dark lately. Are you okay?" I didn't want to be a burden, so I forced a smile and replied, "I'm fine, just a bit of family stuff." Yes, just a little. Just a bit, I told myself as I worked through the day. Mary, even after getting married and having children, had always been concerned about me. On holidays, she would sometimes bring my granddaughter and for a visit. But lately, since Tom started shutting himself away, we had decided to meet outside. I didn't want them to see the mess his room had become. Mary didn't seem to mind for the first 2 or 3 times, but by the 4th, she seemed to sense something was off. It was during a break at a restaurant that she asked me, "Mom, is something wrong? We've been meeting outside a lot lately."
Is that so? And seems to be having fun.
And was happily playing with a killer whale plush toy I had bought for her. Is Tom okay? He's not bothering you by going fishing all the time, is he?
Not at all. Tom goes fishing almost every week. It's a sign he's doing well.
The truth was he wasn't going fishing at all, but spending his time lazing around or going to the casino. I couldn't tell her that, so I desperately covered it up. Despite his previous good money management, lately, he's been squandering money on casinos and lotteries. As long as he's okay, Mary said as she sipped her coffee. The sun was warm enough to make one slightly sweat, signaling the end of winter. I watched Mary and Anne, wishing this moment could last forever. But my wish was in vain as reality only got worse.
Give me some money, Mom.
When I got home, Tom was demanding money in an irritated tone. What for? What happened?
It's the casino. They've got this new slot machine, and I lost everything. I need to go back and win.
Stop it. No more casinos, no lotteries.
Give me the money now. I need it to get back at them.
He snatched my bag, took some money from my wallet, and dashed out. It all happened so fast, I was left speechless. Terrifying. That feeling came later. My bag and the emptied wallet were thrown carelessly on the hallway floor. I just sat down, powerless. Why has it come to this? Will I never see the lively and vibrant Tom again? Am I doomed to spend my days with a declining Tom? With that despair, the days and then weeks passed. The frequency of Tom's outings and the amount of money he demanded increased. Sometimes I would find my wallet lighter than it should be. I couldn't leave my wallet at home without worry anymore. Thinking it a good opportunity, I started using electronic payments I learned at my cashier job, carrying no cash. I was happy about accumulating points, but when Tom found out I wasn't carrying cash, he exploded again.
Why not? It's just some pocket money. Why don't you get a job? Don't mess with me. Give me the money.
He kept demanding money, spending it all on gambling. When the money was gone, he would shout and scream for more. I feared it might escalate to violence. I was so worn down, I lost the energy to meet with my children. Gradually, I saw less and less of Mary and Anne, using my part-time job as an excuse. After about a year of this exhausting routine, Mary contacted me.
It's almost your birthday, right? Let's all get together next Sunday.
According to Mary, the grandchildren were planning another surprise for this year. Looking at the calendar, the annual birthday celebration was just around the corner. I hadn't even realized it. Given Tom's current state and my own condition, I couldn't feel like celebrating. I wanted to decline. But contrary to my true feelings, the idea lifted my spirits. The thought of my children and grandchildren wanting to celebrate with me made me happy. For just that one day a year, I too wanted to be lively and happy. That's what I found myself thinking.
Thank you. I'll keep that day open then.
I haven't spoken a word about Tom to them. As long as I keep quiet, and as long as Tom doesn't meet anyone, they won't find out. No need to worry them. That's what I decided, to pretend everything was fine with Tom just for the day of the celebration.
Tom and I are living happily as ever.
That's what I'll say. I murmured to myself when Tom wasn't around, convincing myself. After Mary's call, I started cleaning up the house bit by bit. It would be troublesome if there was no space to step in this room when more than 10 people gathered. I gathered all the dust-covered delivery boxes and threw them out with the trash. The bundles of lottery tickets thrown in the trash can were also bagged and discarded. I vacuumed while Tom was out because he would yell that it was noisy. I cleaned carefully, considering the birthday party was coming up. And then, the day arrived. It was a clear, calm day. About an hour before the children and grandchildren were to arrive, Tom left. When he found out about the birthday party the day before,
"It's too noisy, cancel it,"
he had shouted.
"I can't cancel it, everyone's already made plans." "Are you kidding me?"
He then raged in his room for a while. Just a short while ago, after snatching some money from me, he went off to the casino. I felt a bit relieved. This way, Tom wouldn't have to meet any of the other family members. All that was left was to wait for everyone to arrive. Not long after Tom had left, the children and grandchildren started to arrive one by one. Being wished a happy birthday by everyone filled my heart. 9 grandchildren, each of them, celebrated with me. I was happy, yet I felt a complex mix of emotions. Was I right to feign happiness for these children? That thought unexpectedly crossed my mind. It's okay, it's just for today, I told myself, fighting off that small sense of guilt. The birthday party started soon after. Appetizers, salads, chicken, and pizza brought by everyone lined the tables. The last to arrive was a birthday cake made by the grandchildren, which Mary brought. The cake was topped with plenty of chocolate, strawberries, and blueberries. In the center, a chocolate plate read "Happy Birthday Grandma." Its crooked letters endearingly hard to read. The warmth of their effort touched my heart.
How wonderful! Thank you, everyone!
I hugged each of the grandchildren, one by one. Their efforts in preparing this meant the world to me. Lastly, I hugged Anne.
Thank you, Anne.
I put the strawberries on. Her childish words overwhelmed me, and I hugged her again. Mom, you know, Mary said, standing next to Anne. Suddenly, I noticed her belly was swollen, and Mary was happily rubbing it.
Next month, you'll get to meet your 10th grandchild.
The room was so crowded I hadn't noticed. She was already in her final month.
Wow!
Surprise, joy, and an anxiety no less significant than these emotions all surged at once. Well, I haven't seen you for about a year, so I never got the chance to tell you. It's a boy.
Live long, Grandma.
Yes, indeed. And hugged me around the neck, leaning in. Everyone present rejoiced and celebrated this happy news. Congratulations. Our family is growing, I'll send a gift, they exchanged various words. Yet, somewhere inside me, I couldn't suppress the complex feelings. In truth, Tom had been continuously taking money from me, depleting my savings. My daily life had become a struggle. I wanted to give Mary a present if I could, but I no longer had the means. I never expected to feel so miserable at such a joyful gathering. Amidst the celebratory mood, I quietly slipped away. I felt so pitiful that I was on the verge of tears. Pretending to go to the bathroom, I went upstairs. Tom's room, with the door half open, caught my eye. What state was his room in now? I slowly opened the door. The room, with the curtains drawn, was dim. Empty beer cans and bottles, lottery tickets scattered everywhere. And fishing magazines left as they were. My business bag was torn and stuffed into the trash can. The fishing rods and other tools, relegated to a corner of the room, were covered in dust. In that devastated room, I stood dumbfounded. Why had it come to this? Tears I had been holding back streamed down my cheeks. Then, I heard a loud noise from downstairs and someone coming up. Turning around in shock, I saw Tom. His eyes, peering through disheveled bangs, gleamed unnervingly. As he spoke in a growling tone.
I lost at the casino. Give me some money, I'm going back.
Enough is enough.
Just give me the money.
I don't have it right now.
The grandchildren are here, so please be quiet. You have money for the grandchildren but not for me?
I don't have enough to give to the grandchildren either, really.
Lies. You're just treating me like a nuisance.
Tom, furious, advanced on me.
Stop it. I want to give a gift to my new grandchild too, and it's frustrating that I can't. Isn't your own son more important to you?
I slipped past Tom and fled. Finding another room that was open, I entered one usually used for drying laundry, which had a balcony. Looking back, Tom was chasing after me, his eyes bloodshot, swinging his arms wildly.
Money! Give me money!
I went out onto the balcony. If Tom hit me and I fell badly, who knows what could happen. Such an incident might lead to Tom being arrested. This could severely hinder his chances of reintegrating into society. The remaining children and grandchildren would be hurt and saddened. That was absolutely not acceptable. In a moment of desperation, I jumped from the balcony. A fall from the second floor might result in broken bones at worst. Escaping Tom like this seemed a small price to pay. I landed headfirst. The world turning red, blue, then dark. A tremendous shock went through my body, and for a moment, my senses vanished. Alerted by the noise, the children screamed. The grandchildren started crying. And the area became chaotic. From the balcony, I saw Tom peering down. Looking shaken and frightened. He held his head and screamed. A cry heard by his siblings. I don't remember much after that. Tom's cries of regret or sorrow echoed in the distance. When I woke up, I was staring at the ceiling of a hospital room. The doctor told me I had sustained serious injuries requiring 6 months to heal. He scolded me.
Why on earth did you jump from the balcony?
I had fractured my right leg and right wrist, necessitating rehabilitation. Understandably, the children and grandchildren were shocked. They visited me in the hospital when they could, relieved I was alive. Though it was far from a simple matter of being safe, at least my life was spared. Everyone seemed relieved about that. Especially Mary thought her heart would stop. When she visited the hospital, she burst into tears upon seeing me.
Don't ever do something like that again. Mom.
I'm sorry. It seems Tom confessed everything to his siblings that day. This revelation made them aware of our financial and living situation. If you were in trouble, you should have told us. I didn't want to worry you. Worrying would have been far better than this, Mary said, tears streaming down her face, even in front of Anne. Knowing about mine and Tom's situation, the children offered financial and living support. They sympathized with Tom's layoff but strongly criticized his subsequent actions. Tom also seemed to have deeply reflected on his actions. He worked hard to find re-employment and luckily secured a position at a small real estate company. After securing the job, Tom started visiting me in the hospital. He entered the room, shrinking in apology. Mom, I'm sorry for all the trouble. His hair was neatly combed, his beard cleanly shaved. Dressed in a clean suit and tie, he looked like he was about to make a fresh start. I was surprised to see a slightly brighter atmosphere around him. People can change, can't they? Don't get all sentimental on me. But how did you change so suddenly? Tom hesitated a little, then, looking down shyly, said, That day, when you tried to escape from me by jumping from the balcony. Yes. At that moment, I thought I had no other choice. Watching you disappear as she fell from the balcony, everything I had done flashed before my eyes in an instant. Tears welled up in Tom's eyes. And then, I came to my senses, wondering what I had done. My jumping must have been a huge shock to Tom. Though it was a drastic measure, it could also be considered a risky choice. I'm sorry. I won't do anything like that again. That's my line. I'll take proper care of you, Mom, so don't leave me behind. True to his words, Tom changed his attitude and returned to the energetic person he was before being laid off. My injuries healed well, and after being discharged from the hospital, I continued to live with Tom. I no longer intend to be angry with Tom. Both Tom and I are in a better situation now. Later, surrounded by our children and grandchildren, we also celebrated my discharge from the hospital. This time, we'll celebrate grandly, Mary said, seemingly having rallied the siblings. By the time I was discharged, Mary's baby had been born, increasing the grandchildren to 10. A little boy with adorable hands. All I wish for is that he lives a healthy, happy, and prosperous life.